noises, random noises, because I've got music that I'm going to be making into like a beginning slate, and that will mean that I can test all the levels, make sure all the shit is fucking right. But right now, I cannot ensure any like quality shit fucking until people say words. So somebody say shit fucking.
Shit fucking.
Shit
Shit
fucking.
fucking.
All right, cool. So now we can test the shit fucking quality.
Shit
Fucking.
fucking.
All right, cool. So now we can test. All right. So with that being said, we got things that we're going to say words about. Uh, so this will be two. I don't know how many of these we're gonna do, and we might do a 2.5 as well of the Paleo Problem series. But basically, the Paleo Problem series is us going over the Paleo planks of the Paleo strategy, and talking about the ones that are good and the ones that aren't. And probably coming up with generally a better strategy later. We're just basically going to be taking a bunch of fucking notes on the subject and seeing what works. So the newer person to this channel, Eli, can introduce himself first, then Kevin, then Hody, then Kareem.
All right. So, my name's Eli. Probably going to be reviving my Watchman State channel. It's very out of date. I don't think I've posted on it in years. Everything there is wrong and old. So, I
Cool.
guess, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, like, well, what do you do on there? You're free to plug more than that.
I don't know. Like, well, basically, it's political commentary, but the stuff on there is a bit older and a slightly more right wing than I would be now. So, I guess go dig up dirt while it's still live.
Hey, look, just as a preface here, like, because sometimes, like, I think people get the wrong impression about me. I, like, I'm here for transformation, I'm here for positive movement, and I'm not perfect now. I'm a fucking cunt sometimes, and, like, when it comes down to it, I was a real piece of shit when I was much younger. Um, here's some easy dirt that's just, I'll bring it back to the surface again because I might as well. I used to want automated turrets on the border because I thought we needed to keep the criminals and rapists out of the country. That's the kind of level I was on. I was on glass Iran and the rest of the Middle East so that Israel can take over and we can have the second coming. I was a Christo-fascist to the highest degree. I was a very
Well, that's weird.
white America bullshit blah blah, and now I'm this cunt. I'm a different kind of cunt. So,
Thing on my channel.
um,
Mine was more like we should not have open borders because laws exist for a reason. That's
eh.
about as bad as it got.
Yeah, see? You were more humane than I was starting out. Um, but that was when I was like 16. And then like around 17 I started to get more libertarian, and my mother like she introduced me to the Libertarian Party because I was like I don't like Democrats or Republicans. And so like it's been a journey ever since of be like removing the fucking statist cock from my ass. So anyway, Kevin.
Okay, I'm next. So my name is Kevin. I am the mutualist from Maine. As Kareem and I like to say, we are half and half. Um, in terms of my political development, since that came up in this as a topic, I started out as an orthodox Marxist at 11 after reading Animal Farm. Not quite a Marxist-Leninist, but more of an orthodox Marxist, as much as an 11-year-old can be. You know, then I went to Catholic school when I was 14, and I fell in love with the Jesuits and their commitment to the ideals of Christianity, even if I was never going to be a Christian myself, because I am a rationalist and an empiricist by nature. So it's not that I'm not an anti-theist. I just like to believe in stuff I can prove empirically. So I fell in love with Ron Paul and the right-wing libertarian movement after that. Fast forward to 24 years old, 10 years ago, I got out of college. I experienced capitalism unfiltered from my family and was like, holy shit, this is insane. Why did my movement like this? Not only is this terrible, but it's probably statist. Did some research and decided on mutualism, there's terms to describe it: libertarian market socialism, center-left anarchism. Jeremy, you said you wanted to do a stream at some point defining mutualism. I know that's not the topic of this stream, but I'll start with how I described it to someone once. It just sticks with me because it makes sense. My politics are one part neoclassical liberalism, one part opt-in democratic socialism, one part solar punk futurism, and one part romantic conservatism. I've memorized that because it just makes sense to me. Cool. That's my intro.
Oh man, I feel like my intro is maybe insufficient.
Oh,
Well, you're
sorry,
free to say. You're free. No, hey, no apologies here. You're free to say more words if you want, Eli.
I was half kidding, but okay. So when I was young, like middle school, my parents didn't like to talk about politics, and this was getting to where I was almost voting age in like 2004. I wanted to know more, and actually, no, I was voting age pretty much. And neither of my parents wanted to talk about it, so I went to wherever I could find information, which turned out to be talk radio, but I didn't really like what I was hearing necessarily, because it was like, at the time, it was like, Hannity, Limbaugh, whatever. And it was like sometimes, like on economics, I would agree with the conclusions, but not necessarily how they got to them, right? And so pretty quickly it was like, oh, like libertarians, they're like economically right without all the other nonsense. And then I've been there ever since.
Hody.
So I guess my modern thing is I'm a like minarchist, but on the far minimum end of minarchist, and a bit of a also like objectivist / naturalist. Some hybrid between those two.
Hody.
That's cool, guys. I'm Hody Johns. I am with the Love First Christians, and boy, I like that we're kind of talking about like trying to condense our liberty journeys a little bit. I came from the right wing, the GOP. I was a Republican strategist in Colorado back when Colorado was a swing state. Got to learn about how the GOP operated. Really, before I even knew what libertarianism was, saw an opportunity with the Tea Party about how sick people were of having the GOP pretend to be economically sound and not be sound, and two, how like bigoted it become. And there was finally like a group of, a large group of conservatives that were like, we're done being racist bigots, we're done being anti-gay, we're done being homophobes, we're done being anti-foreigner, and we're actually serious about shutting down the government. The way that ended up was the Republicans challenged our own nominees who would have beaten the Democrat nominees, made sure to get all their old boys together, and made me and my buddies who would help them win election after election, made sure we were no longer welcome. The Democrats and the Republicans will tank themselves before they will even consider the ideas of liberty to enter their parties. Therefore, I will never support them again. Yay! And I think that's it. That's basically led me where we are today. Of course, I flirt with the Libertarian Party. I still understand them, get them. I can be persuaded to vote from time to time. That's a debate we'll have later. But I have arrived at anarchy, and that's the place I enjoy being.
All right. Kareem.
All right, where to start here? So I was a kid listening to Sum 41 and Blink 182. I wanted to impress my friends. One day they called and said, hey, we're listening to Black Flag. They're against the government. Literally, I was like 10 or 11 at the time. And this is at some point where like, okay, we're going to rebel against the government. And I'm like, well, I guess I just want to be cool. I don't want my friends to think I'm a square, right? And they said, well, let's go to a punk rock show. So I went to this place called the Rally Alley in Latrobe. And then I started to learn about SLC punk. I started to learn about punk culture. And I listened to a lot of bands. Now, a lot of them didn't have a lot of substance. It was like, yeah, all right, the Sex Pistols and the Clash and things like that were good music. But then there's one band called Crass in a place in England called Essex. Particularly, a lot of people, you can look this up. But Steve Ignorant was the vocalist of that. Also, Penny Rombard had a thing. And they had a a slogan called "The only authority is yourself." I'm like, wait, the only authority is yourself. What does that mean? And this is dial-up internet, so I had to try and figure it out without like high-speed internet. Basically, what I came to is, life is your get a life. Life is your responsibility. And then I really enjoyed that. But the problem is with punk culture is it doesn't have like a coherent. It's a good social anarchy, doesn't have a coherent economic identity. So it's like, okay, we're going to party chaos. Like, you know how SLC punk ends. Not good. He actually becomes more of an ANCAP at the end. So I was like, okay, well, I'm still anti-war, stuff like that. And then I saw the Ron Paul debate with Giuliani. I'm like, I like that guy. Then my dad, who would watch Bill Maher, said, because he's like a blue dog Democrat, showed me like more stuff. I'm like, I like this Ron Paul guy. Fast forward, I get out of college. My friend, who's also a libertarian, we did a couple Google Hangouts like this, if you remember the old Google Hangouts, with Gary Johnson. And Gary Johnson's actually a pretty good libertarian. He's just not he doesn't have that energy. And then after that, he calls me one day. He's like, someone got arrested for loading a shotgun. You like him, Kareem. He's very abrasive. I'm like, who is it? He's like, Adam Kokesh. And I remember Adam Kokesh saying ANCAPs are the only anarchists. And I'm like, wait, ANCAPs are the only anarchists? What does that mean? What's up? All these people. I looked up Jeff Berwick and I'm like, yeah, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. That's the only way to go. And I also kind of wanted my computer, my game system, because back in the day, I'm like, why did these anarchists and mutualists, why do all these left-wing guys want to run and go garden? That sucks, man. I want to play video games all day and be an anarchist. Why is there not an available strategy where I can have Bitcoin and games? And that is why I became an anarcho-capitalist. Wasn't the most enlightening thing, but then that happened was Jeremy came on. Then I got a co-host. I joined the Mises Caucus. Got a co-host named Daniel Bitro from a friend named Mark Bazzacco. I just did a little stream with him and explained to him private companies actually have to not be part of the state. Then Daniel said, I want to get guests from everywhere. He since stopped streaming, kind of became neoliberal, which is not good. But he brought Jeremy on one day. Me and Jeremy had an argument. I was actually going the ANCAP slowly to the Groypers. The Groypers made fun of Israel, and they made fun of Dan Crenshaw. We should be friends with Nick and the Groypers, because they're good guys. They believe in traditional values or something. And then Jeremy's like, he's a fascist. I'm like, Nick's not a fascist. He's a paleo conservative. Now, I will agree there's a difference between those two. There are some people just like old school values, and there's some people who will go violently enforce those. That's where the fact. But I was like, okay, yeah, he is. So I started, streaming with Jeremy, did a few projects, Anarch Unity, but then I'm like, okay, does anyone actually call themselves a pan-anarchist? If I can find one person who's intellectually good with that, I just want to hear what they have to say. I'm not gonna change from ANCAP because I'm convinced this is the best thing ever. I type in pan-anarchy, Keith Preston comes up constantly. I'm like, this guy knows, he's like, oh, anarchist in the Middle Ages, anarchist in the Industrial Revolution, Jewish anarchist, Muslim anarchist. I'm like, this dude knows, you're like, pull anarchy. Anarchy was Jeopardy. He would literally win every time. Give me, anarchy in the feudal age of Japan. Oh yeah, there was a daimyo. Under that daimyo, under the Uesugi, there was an anarchist Buddhist faction. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got me. I don't know how he put a ton of research in there. Got him on a few streams. Kevin and actually Jeremy knew him before. I said, you know what? In a world of 8 billion people, even if the state fell tomorrow, even if you got Chase to win, if the state fell tomorrow, all globalist institutions, UN's gone, all state government, was gone, all local government was reduced. I'm convinced, and you're like, everybody except Rothbard, they would say no. Everybody except Proudhon, no. Everybody be a mutualist, everybody be an ANCOM, everybody be an ANPRIM, everybody be a solar punk, which I think solar punks are a good way to do that, to connect ANPRIMs and everybody be an anarcho transhumanist. I think a lot of people would say no, or everybody be a Christian anarchist conversely. I said the only rational thing to do, and the only likely thing to do in the real world, is say, yes, I'm still an anarchist. I don't want the state. But 8 billion people are going to do things differently. And if you look at the Zapatistas, they don't call it, Mexican anarcho-communism. They just got a new president. They call it neo-Zapatismo. Rojava does not call it, we're like Bukchinite. They don't call it libertarian municipalism. They're not like, welcome to Syria. He's our libertarian Bukchinite. They call it just like the free. So I'm like, first of all, people wouldn't call it particularly that school. They would just follow that school. Secondly, they would call it, they would do different things. I met some people who are Ann Prims in the Appalachian Mountains, and hey, I think it all works. The best way to get there, I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, let's have states secede, but that's probably dangerous. So, because that's huge chunks. But what works is Bookchin's idea of libertarian municipalism, where you have popular assemblies who would vote. This is how we want to govern our lives. And then citizenship actually becomes an art, not statecraft. And I think that's how you can get to pan-anarchy. That's how you can establish your own constitutions, your own set of rules, and everything like that. In the meantime, though, I'm still part of Mises Caucus, but I'm supporting Chase, Rachel, and Mike Dermott, not because I think they're perfect on everything. I have gripes with Chase. I'm not crazy about the Abraham Lincoln stuff. I'm not crazy about him having a VP as a cop. But I think he's the best way to not have nuclear war with Russia and not to continue the mass killing in the Middle East. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, so actually, let's start off with that. Because the last time we... Oh, go for it. Yeah, sorry, I forget you literally raised your hand. Go for it.
Oh, Kareem, how can you say that the punk culture has no economic standard whatsoever? Didn't you know that we had the G.G. Allen dirty cigarette dollar standard of 1975?
I love G.G. Allen, but, like, here's the funny thing. I think G.G. Allen...
the Henry Rollins protein shake standard of 1983.
I was like a little kid then, so no.
I know. It was. I just needed to make the joke. That's all.
I didn't know who G.G. Allen was till my mid-20s. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Dude, Henry Rollins is my favorite punk
what I like. What I like about Henry is that he's got like, and we could maybe do it like a straight up music stream someday. Maybe we could have a music series talking anarchist music, but like, Henry Rollins has an Einstürzen Neubauten tattoo. And that's industrial, like, Godfathers. And industrial is my domain. Like, my whole...
Okay.
Like, as far as I'm concerned, the Rivet Heads carried the punk legacy forward so that it survived.
I was a Rivet Head all throughout high school.
Yeah.
Ramstein, Ministry, Skinny Puppy, Combat Christ, Velvet Acid Christ. I was the only person in my Jesuit high school who knew what industrial metal was.
And, like, KMFDM, Ministry...
Yeah, dude, I went to KMFDM was my second live show of all time, and some little Filipino kid almost punched me in the mosh pit, so I literally caught his fist and just stared at him like this. Like, I wasn't mad, but I was like, stop punching me.
Yeah.
And I was like almost maybe twice his size and like a foot on him, and he just started moshing slowly away from me.
Yeah, he's like, let me not. Yeah, but that...
We weren't even in the pit, me and my friend, we were just hanging out on the edge, and like we were dodging people, but this dude was like 5 or 6 times. Like, literally, I had to go, like, neo-dodge once. And I was like, okay, this is a little excessive.
Yeah, like...
Dude, can you not mosh in my area, please? Thank you. That'd be nice.
Industrial...
Also, Chase,
Industrial
Kareem,
music.
just a heads up. I think...
Yeah, go.
Kareem, I think you mean Chase Oliver, because Chase Rachel's the...
Chase Oliver.
I know you probably just did a name substitution error. It's a super common cognitive thing. I'm not accusing you of anything. But that's a pretty important one, so I just figured I'd let you know.
Yeah.
That's all.
Were you like, hey, that's mutual aid.
But, like, Rivet Heads to me, like, I'll just say this. Industrial music for me and all of its entailments, the fact that I found, like, 100+ bands that I could really sink my teeth and my psychoses into, worked for me. My fucking mental bullshit. Finally, there's noisy-ass fucking angry fucking hostile bullshit that like matches the noise in my head, and I'm like, let me like hyper obsessed with this for like 8 years, and I'm still like every time a Metropolis Records or Wax Tracks 2 song like is dropped, I'll like drop what I'm doing, or Component Records or so many of these others. I'll drop what I'm fucking doing and go listen to it, like straight up. Anyway, yeah, we should talk music at some point. That'd be an interesting stream on its own, just talk music for radicals. But so let's start with the Chase stuff, the recent Chase stuff, because I think that's a valuable thing to sort of understand, is the ramifications of the paleo strategy and how the people who would generally support that kind of thing are currently rejecting a candidate, like a nominee, because they don't agree with his social policies. So who wants to go first? Hody?
I love his social policies. I get why some people don't like them, but it's the libertarian position to get government out of stuff if there's any doubt at all about it. I mean, I'm an anarchist anyway, so obviously my bias is going to be to get the state out of it. Listen, there's a lot of good things that society should do that we don't want the state in charge of. This is actually really relevant to our conversation today about the paleo strategy. So when we say like, oh, but what about all these other social positions? It's like, cool. If you want even if you think it's really important that everybody be pro life, want government intervention when it comes to childhood treatments, want government intervention on the border, they want government, the paleo strategy, want government intervention into cultural issues, right? Like, even if you think that you like your cultural issues, and I am a Christian and I live a rather conservative lifestyle, government is the absolute worst solution for your problems. If you are really pro-life, as I am, show up for people. I think 60% of women who get abortions are conservative evangelicals because they are scared of what their parents are going to do to them, and the rest feel they have no support system. As somebody who worked in a hospital who saw this firsthand, I can tell you this is 99% of them. Nobody's having elective abortions. All of them. I can't say nobody. Obviously, you'll find some stupid TikToker out there. But 99.9% of these people feel they have no support system. They're making a decision that they don't want to make, and they need some help. Be that help, as opposed to having a politician be the iron and anvil for you. Chase is going to do things that maybe you disagree with as far as the trans issue, right? Let's say that. Okay. Let's say you don't like transing the kids, and you like phrasing it that way because you like to pretend that Chase is the one actually telling them to do this as opposed to just liberating them to do this. Fine. Let's say you don't believe in trans people. Let's say you just say transgenderism, I don't think it exists. Fine. That's your belief, and that's how it goes. Do you want politicians? Because it's not, with the nature of government, it's not, I want you to take care of this and do it ethically. It's, you're going to take care of this and do it on your terms. 2% of people, I believe in the world, or at least in America, are redheads. There are even more intersex people than redheads. So just think about that for a moment. Intersex people will also be denied the same hormone treatments that are being recommended to transgender people if these anti-transgender laws pass. Everybody in this call, I guarantee, everybody agrees that intersex people deserve treatment for their conditions. All of us. Now, some of us may not be pro-trans. Some of us may be anti-trans or not believe in trans or whatever it may be, right? Fine. But understand that if you give that power to the politician, that collateral damage is going to be a huge chunk of people who have a legitimate condition that we all agree on that deserve treatment. Chase's position of getting the government out of it, you may not like it, but it is the libertarian position. One of the issues, and I said this last time, and I'll just say it again, he is really not as big on social issues as you think. It gets made about that a lot because he is gay. He uses the term trans less than most of his competitors used it. The difference is he is supportive of trans people as opposed to against them. So if your issue is I just want somebody who's agnostic on the culture war, Chase was the best candidate you could have hoped for. He spends very little time dealing with it. He has a few supportive tweets about it. Your candidate, whoever it may be, spent more time in the culture war. You just need to ask yourself if they spent it fighting for the wrong side of that culture war, and that's maybe what you liked about it. Other part, Chase is big on economics. This is an end the Fed, taxation is theft, dude. Again, this is some guy who talks about taxation more than some of those Austrian econ and cap dudes who are running. The thing is it's just he also gay, though, so people just assume he leftoid Democrat communist or whatever. Right?
Jimmy Dore.
Right. Right. And so the thing is like, this is really, for me, I am so done playing defense. I think I ended my statements last time saying this. I'm really excited about this. You're looking at like, 40 million views on TikTok. Like their #1 video over the last week on TikTok is just Chase Oliver getting interviewed and them asking Donald Trump or Joe Biden, which one do you got to choose, gun to your head, and him just saying the gun would go off.
Go off.
People outside of the libertarian circles, we're all over here tiptoeing because we don't want to hurt our friends that fell into the paleo strategy. I understand. I don't want to push these people out either. I want to reason with them. I want them to come around on the issue. But people outside of it are dying for somebody who is right on the social issues, awesome on economic issues, and anti-war. There is a huge chunk of the population that we have not tapped into as libertarians for a long time that believe this stuff. He is reaching them. He's doing it currently. They are currently having a problem. If you work for the Chase Oliver campaign, Kareem, you can verify this. They are having more volunteers sign up than they know what to do with or how to handle. That may sound like, oh, that's a real big problem. The thing is there's hundreds of people trying to process all the volunteers, and we still are having a difficult time
as the saying
organizing
goes,
everybody.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. I will take the Mises Caucus challenge up. I believe he will get more votes than RFK Jr. I am fine to, I don't know, that doesn't even need to be a debate. I'm just fine to let it see what happens, right? Like let it ride and we'll see. Even at their own, meeting, the Mises Caucus said we can plan on less than a fraction of a percent from whoever the presidential candidate is, favorite or least favorite. I bet Chase will get more than 1% at the very least. If I'm wrong about that, I'll eat crow in a few months. But other than that, I'm actually just really excited about it. Pro Chase, pro gays, pro trans, pro rainbow, anarchy, pro and the Fed. Taxation is theft, anti-war. I'm excited that I get to do it all as opposed to kind of pick and choose my favorites.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff there too that you highlighted on. One, yeah, he's not super crazy about social issues like everybody's bringing up, but they're bringing that stuff up and they're like, oh, well, he's for this, he's for that. I'm like, have you actually looked at the website positions? Oh, no, we don't want to do that. We want to look at some Twitter thing or something someone edited, or, people on the internet are going to make stuff up. As far as I'm concerned, though, you have to look at like important issues and decide what issues, because you can't do everything. What issues do I care about? Well, he's anti-war. He actually is decent on Austrian economics. Not great. There's things I disagree with him on, but, I can leave those aside. Also, one good thing is, yeah, he does have some pretty good messaging with, gun to your head, like, Trump or Joe Biden. Shows he's not willing to cave. One thing I can agree with the RFK people and the Lars people was when I was at the convention, they had the signs that said stop 270. Didn't know what that was. So the idea behind that is if there's not enough votes for Biden or Deep State Don, considering he runs, I don't know what the heck's going to happen between now and November because they're always doing a court case and Joe Biden's health is and I don't know if he knows where he's at. But aside from those two things, one of them going to jail and one of them running into a wall, it's going to be an interesting campaign season. But I think we have the ability with the RFK people mobilizing, even though I'm not crazy about Bobby Kennedy, to get more competition out there. And I think Chase and RFK, if we play our cards right, have the ability to get out there and we have the ability to stop 270. And I think that would be interesting. What 270 means, my understanding is that it's not a street. It's an idea that actually I think Lars Mapstead came up with. So I'll give him credit for that. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to run, because obviously if they say you're going to run as a libertarian and win, people are going to laugh. But as you know how the Electoral College works, as it works now, Biden and Trump need 270 electoral votes to win. Guess what? If they stop short, if we get 269, then they can't win. And there's a lot of battlegrounds there. It's Arizona, Wyoming, North Dakota, Maine, where you're at.
Well, it would go to runoff.
Yeah, it would go to runoff. So I think the idea proposed by Lars is still a good idea that we should implement into the Chase campaign, and even with the RFK people, if that's what they want to do, which is, hey, let's get out there. Let's actually show people, Republican or Democrat, and the Green Party too. Actually, people have told me, I forget who said it, but someone said Joe is so bad that some of his contributors are helping Jill Stein. And I don't agree with Jill Stein on everything, but hey, if Jill Stein, Chase, and RFK can put a dent in the Republican factions, and stop 270, I think that's a good idea. And I think that will at least force people to say, well, okay, there's more options than one. It'll break psychological conditioning that says, well, I have to, choose between one bag of Lay's and the other. And of course, we're going to hear the slogan, this is the most important election of our lifetime. I've been hearing that since George Bush. Guess what? It isn't. I don't really care. The whole, we're not going to have a country left and blah, blah, blah. At this point, I'm like, don't threaten me with a good time, because I've heard that too. There's been worse things than this. The Soviet Union is not threatening us. We're not. There's serious monetary problems. There is, of course, because of government now, the blooming issue of nuclear proliferation under NATO. I think if you're interested in not dying, then RFK, I don't like him on most things, or as Booby Kennedy, as Dr. Shiva calls him, Chase Oliver, and, Jill Stein have the ability to do. And coalitions to me do not specifically mean just I say, oh, I'm an ANCAP man, an ANCAP stand. Can I be friends with ANCOMs? That's part of it. And that's what I do with Mad Liberty. But to me, also coalitions mean I'm going to work with different parties, different people to at least, if I'm not going to smash the state, smash the duopoly. And then we can smash the state. Hopefully that was long-winded.
Eli, you got words? You are muted.
Well, I didn't say anything yet anyway. Well, it's not that I don't have I have no shortage of things to say about Chase. I'm observing mostly because I haven't quite figured out. I don't know much about the Paleo strategy and how this fits in.
It will.
And so I was kind of, I'm not terribly worried. I didn't want to derail into a Chase debate or anything.
Yeah.
I've had time to look some things over since the last stream.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know how many of the rest of you, because you're not quite as engaged with them, went through Angela's whole thing about him and all that.
I watched the broadcast.
Yeah.
I think it's insulting that she did the whole this is clown world. No, fuck off. It's the choice that your party made. Stand behind it without insulting people. That's what the chair is supposed to do. Anyway, go ahead.
Clown World is a fascist dog whistle. That's what they use all the time on Fast Twitter. I make a point of following them and ghosting them with ghost accounts to, gather intel. So not that I would ever be like, oh, you're a fascist the second someone says it, but I know that they use it as a dog whistle to be like, the world is topsy-turvy. Me. Also, Kareem, you know who I think will put a dent in the duopoly is Marianne Williamson and her orbs of light. That I think is the ultimate.
She'll summon them, manifest them from the earth.
That's what we need right now is orbs of light. Williamson 2024, everyone.
So
what I was going to say, actually, in reference to what you're saying is, it's kind of funny. I've been seeing memes pop up now since I brought it. You could say manifestation, but now I'm seeing like libertarian, like people keep making memes now with like unicorns and Bigfoot, and I get that people have to read into it, but to break it down, they're like, oh, here's our new friend, libertarian socialist. I'm like, it exists. There's people on my Facebook that'll say libertarian socialist. They don't have an argument against it. They're just like, the term or left libertarian or libsoc doesn't exist. I'm like, it exists. The question is, you don't have to like it. I'm not telling you to go syndicalist if you don't want to, or go mutualist, or go I don't know. I've never seen someone call them a platformist, but maybe someone does. But they're like, oh, libertarian socialism just doesn't exist. I'm like, yeah, it does. So does libertarian communism and communalism, which is what I subscribe to. So
we'll just get into this briefly. This is how it ties in. Because the Paleo strategy, Eli, is a strategy designed to appeal to old school conservatives and tie their movements in with modern libertarian spaces. And by modern, I mean at the time, this was like 1992. This was literally like the year I was born. So like fucking when this came out, Rothbard was trying to ally with the George H.W. Bush right and the Pat Buchanan crowd. And in doing so, the first three elements here that we already went over, and we'll be going over them element by element until we've run this subject into the early grave. Slash taxes, pretty good. Like, pretty much everybody here is going to agree to that. But then the next two were slash welfare, get rid of underclass rule, which is a truly evil way of putting it. Because what he's saying is that these people who are on welfare are actually the ones ruling society. A very Ayn Rand way of thinking about it. Short of abolition, severely cutting and restricting it. Basically, hey, billionaires, let me suck your cock. Let me talk about, how you're just paying too much to this, group of underclass that is actually the rulers of society, not those with power and money and whatever. These people are the real problem. That's how he decided to appeal to them. And then, beyond that, similarly, in Plank 3 that we've gone over, and we'll be going over Plank 4 today, abolish racial or group privileges. Abolish affirmative action, set aside racial quotas, etc., and point out that the root of such quotas is the entire, quote, civil rights structure, which tramples on the property rights of every American. So, I don't like that shit either, because it's first off, look, I'm not saying that I think, people should be forced to engage with those with whom they don't want to. But those people who want to ban black people from their businesses or treat them worse or, insert other minority group, they ain't the kind of people I want to associate with. And they're certainly not, in my view, libertarian, because they're, rejecting the, free will necessary to acknowledge the existence of liberty to begin with. If we are slaves to our genetics and we cannot improve beyond that because we were born black or white or whatever, Jewish, trans, gay, whatever, we don't have liberty. We can't make choices. So a libertarian must rely on free will and like agency as a key component of their like ideas and philosophies. I don't think you can be a, for instance, like racist libertarian. And I've made that point many times. But either way, trying to ally with those people instead of the actual underclass that has been like, you know, the non-ruling underclass that has been downtrodden by the state, like from a libertarian perspective, it's basically like, please conservatives, give me some relevance. And we've recently again seen where that gets you. So, like, that's how this all ties in. And we'll be on number 4 today. We've already gone over those two. You're free to discuss those, since I think maybe you weren't. Were you on for one of the Paleo Problems streams? I actually don't remember whether you were on for that or the LNC one.
No.
Yeah, you were on the LNC one.
No, I was in. Right,
Yeah.
and so okay, so that gives me some interesting, because what's funny is then I too have a criticism of the paleo strategy then, but I feel like it's going to be a very different criticism than most of the rest of the room. And so my perception of that, if that's what the paleo strategy is a criticism that I've been voicing for a little while now. Kareem has heard it from me, and that's where I've been trying to convince people in the Libertarian Party when I'm like at the convention and things, that like capitalism is great, but in some sense it's insufficient, and also in some sense it doesn't really exist, because capitalism, as described, for example, by Marx, is a like moral, rational decision-making philosophy. But that's not really what capitalism is. Capitalism, now some people have now taken this thing that has emerged that we're calling capitalism and are treating it like it's that. And that's what I'm saying the mistake is. Instead, I'm saying capitalism is something that arrives out of the existence of other liberties, but there are more liberties beyond those that result in the consequence of capitalism. So capitalism can be a good measure of what is liberty or how much liberty there is, but it's not a total measure. For example, like things like religious freedom don't factor into the line going up or down, right? And the things that people want aren't necessarily things that make the line go up or down. Generally speaking, when left to their own choices, people end up choosing generally to have families, and they choose stability. But people who are willing and able to take risks and that maybe forgo some of those other things, like forgo family in pursuit of making more money, taking more dangerous jobs, whatever, they'll tend to make more money. But that doesn't mean that they are more free, because this is not an economic factor, right? So it's kind of selling short. And so, like, for example, I would agree with part of the platform saying that like the government welfare is awful and needs to go. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I want the billionaires to just be able to do whatever the hell they want because now they're taxed less. Because on the corporate side, I don't think that the rights as described would ever entail, in fact, would be opposed to the idea that they're completely isolated from moral culpability for the actions of the thing that they own, right? Like, if you were to strictly apply the principles put forward by someone like John Locke, people at Boeing would be in jail for negligent homicide, right? Like...
Eli, I've got a lot to add to that, and I have a lot to add to what Jeremy was saying earlier. I don't want to cut you off. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, and so the thing is that like the welfare state has not helped people, generally speaking. I mean, there are people who have benefited from it, so I'm not saying it's helped zero people. But like if you look at the amount of people and the quality of help that people got when things like churches were a much bigger part of people's lives, like this state has not done a good job in comparison. The churches weren't perfect. The state's not perfect either. And to some degree, discerning who you can help when resources aren't infinite is a very important mechanism. right? Like, do you want to help a father of 4, or do you want to help a heroin addict? The church can make the decision, the state can't. There are some regulations and guidelines that have helped the state a little bit, but then now you're starting to go afoul of equal protection under the law. And that's not something that, we don't want to create laws that don't equally apply, because that can also be a system that's abused. And so it's a tough nut to crack. I think to some degree, like, there's a lot of things in the paleo thing that makes sense, but I feel like it's a really incomplete message. And I won't go as far as to say that I think that the paleos have an ulterior motive. I'm sure there's a few people that do. Like, absolutes generally don't exist. But I think that they're also kind of missing the whole picture. They've like focused on this one little part, and there's a lot more to it. And I'll leave that there for now.
Kevin.
Okay, so my thoughts on this, it's a lot, but I'll be as fast as I can. Jeremy, I agree with you on not wanting to voluntarily associate with racists, even if they do have property rights. I actually want to make a point on this. So when I did my own research into the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act, particularly Title II, which is the one that all the property rights zealots are super annoyed over, I found out that it wasn't merely about forcing multicultural tolerance onto the population. There were material reasons that Title II existed. So in grocery stores, there was like one grocery store for 80 miles in a radius. I don't know if it's literally 80 miles. I'm just throwing out a number there as an example. Black families were not allowed to shop at the grocery store. As a result, their children basically malnourished. There was a few deaths. I don't know how many. Like, I don't memorize statistics when I read. I'm looking for the big picture. And there was a lot of just permanent damage from malnutrition. So racists imposed a material cost on the rest of society because they refused to make a sale of a good, what we would call in economics, a good that's inelastic relative to time, meaning that if you don't get it in time, you might die. So they imposed that cost by refusing to make that sale. And the government had to step in and say, stop imposing third-party costs on everybody else because you don't want to sell groceries to black people and black children grow up to be malnourished. You see my logic there? Mm-hmm. So I believe that with Title II of the Civil Rights Act, it absolutely, under liberty, can be at least applied to things like grocery stores, basic roadside motels. Another example that I mentioned there, black men would... if they worked as salesmen or as traveling employees, would frequently not be able to be allowed to stay at any motels in the South. It got to the point where they would sleep in their cars, and then that was a safety hazard. Or, there was this, I don't know the exact statistics, but I read that there was a slightly higher incidence of robbery for them because they're sleeping in their cars, or like rednecks harassing them or whatever. It became a material cost at a certain point. Liberal society does this thing where it likes to try to distribute all the goods society needs through private services, like the bullshit concept of trying to get healthcare solely through your employer and no other source, because your employer is simply not that invested in your health. You are a thing to them, a tool, not a human being. That's just the nature of things.
Faceless corporations don't give a fuck about people? Damn. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I'm aware. No, I appreciate the joke, man, but I want to point out that from a libertarian perspective, you absolutely have to at least apply Title II to like right of life goods. So I'm not going to use government force or agitate for government force if a head shop refuses to sell a glass piece to a black man. It's not that I'm not offended by what they're doing. It's not that I don't dislike it. It's that the good is elastic relative to time. So black dude can let out a volley of curses, leave the head shop, and then go to the head shop down the street, or he can just put off shopping for it for a week because, you don't have to have a bong. I've broken my bongs and gone a couple of months without them at least. It sucks. I'm not wishing it on anyone, but it's also not a good that, if a good is elastic relative to time and it's vital to survival, then I believe that there's liberty interests in making that good available, whether through distribution or through through law. So I just wanted to let you know that you have an actual material argument you can use now. It's not just about association with racists. Eli, I just wanted to say I loved what you had to say. I think it's all great. I'm going to actually just go ahead and say, as a mutualist, I believe capitalism is a statist system. Mm-hmm. So if you trace capitalism back far enough, sure, like what a lot of right libertarians do is they do this thing where they conflate capitalism with commerce. So they're like, capitalism is the mom and pop shop, or capitalism is when you trade stuff. The more you trade stuff, the more capitalist it is. That's commerce, and commerce to some variety does exist under every economic system to some degree. So, in my opinion, the reason I oppose capitalism is that I think it's statist. I just think it's statist. Also, with the father of four and heroin addict thing, save the father of four first from a utilitarian perspective, because his life is attached to younger and more innocent lives. But don't withhold resources from the heroin addict because you don't like him or you think he's lazy. That's all I have to say on that.
I agree there, in the sense that, like, I'm not saying don't help the heroin addict. I'm saying that the state's inability to discern while also maintaining equal protection is a conflict.
Yeah,
that can be abused through a state system.
Yeah.
And then another thing, just to comment on the one earlier thing that you said, is that I think it was John Locke. I'm not sure. I'm going to paraphrase an expression, but I think it's a good one. And that they said is that one of the duties of a free society is not to allow itself to become a licentious society. Because, and I think the implication there is that because if you're being just thoroughly greedy and taking everything, or corrupting society, eventually you lose the values of freedom. Yeah. And I think there is some truth in that. To what Jeremy was saying, I actually forgot one thing, but I remembered, and that is that I think there's a difference between social, or not social, but like between governing libertarianism and moral libertarianism, right? And I think this is maybe a little bit where I disagree with Chase. Although, like I said, I don't want to make this about him anyway. That's a separate thing. But like, for example, like Kevin was saying, it's like in no way do I condone like a shopkeep just being like, I don't want you here because you're black. Like, if I found that out about a shop, I wouldn't go there either, and I'm obviously not black. Right? Like, I don't want to support that. I don't think that's morally good. I don't think you can, like you were saying, I don't think you can be a libertarian and hold that attitude, right? But to some extent, there is, like, it's difficult to square that circle in a way where you're not creating special interest groups, where you're backing off as far as you can and letting society handle that to some degree. Of course, I made it clear at the start, I'm not a anarchist. I'm anarchist adjacent. So I'm, I guess, the far right person in the room, or whatever that makes me, by proximity. But
also, so we've got we're gonna move to like the next plank because Kareem and Hody were here for the others. But like after short response here, three things. First off, we got some comments in the chat that I will address briefly, and then people can write down notes to address them if they also want to say words about the words. So we got Chris Bennett acknowledging 9 Inch Nails Ministry and Frontline Assembly, so that's awesome. Fellow Rivet Head in the chat. Chris Bennett also says trolls on X don't know the LP platform. Absolutely accurate. The amount of people who just left when Ace Archist and his friends started to quote the platform and just say, "Oh, we're not libertarians anymore." Go fuck yourself then. I mean, you weren't, so leave. And then the other thing education, not legislation. I think that's a relatively good. I mean, it's a bumper sticker because the chat is like, fucking character limited. That's not Chris's fault, and we should get Chris on the next stream as well. And Chris also said he won't be on the ballot here in Illinois. I say it that way because it pisses those people off. Thinking about a write-in candidacy here. The last presidential candidate that I officially voted for, I wrote in Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm very serious about politics. Anyway, then we've got Orthodox Moore. I think maybe new to the channel? I don't know. The name seems familiar maybe, but Paleo strategy has never made sense to me. If Rothbard was an anarchist, how does he achieve that by working with Republicans? Republicans don't want that. And more people should be covering this topic. I agree, because it's a core thing that sort of fucked ass the libertarians for a long time because the culture got jammed by this. Like, suddenly there was an influx of people who just weren't serious about the actual libertarian positions, and that cultural fallout led to a bunch of fuck shit for years. So, yeah, agreed. Also says Title II can definitely apply to any business connected to public roads. The only legit objection is private property with private road that don't benefit from access to public roads. Yeah, like, if your road is connected to the shit that's of the commons, then the commons is part of the reason that you get your business. So it makes some sense on a legal level if you're taking the legalistic minarchisty route to say that, you shouldn't be able to benefit from those if you're not going to treat people who use them with any level of equity. So that also makes some level of sense. But that's like, even if you're doing the fucking like statist paleo government route, it makes zero sense to say that somebody who pays just as many taxes shouldn't have access to whatever because he's black. That's unintentional freestyle there. Taxes, access, black. I should make a song with that. Anyway, Kevin.
Oh, I was just responding to Orthodox Moore's point. Oh no, he's totally right, and it's not like an actual major issue for me. Like, I don't actually care. I'm just analyzing the government through my principles of what a government's supposed to do. And my theory is that the government should be much more, emphatic and possibly initiate force over matters of malnutrition as opposed to merely matters of not being able to buy toys. Yeah. I just meant that as a contrast. It's not like an actual day-to-day policy position for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, just like steel manning the opposition and also pissing in their open mouths because they deserve it. Yeah. Eli.
Well, on that real quick, I was just going to say I don't have much to respond to, so I am going to go participate in some challenge pissing, and I'll be right back.
All right, sounds like a plan. Yeah, the reference to the meme behind him. Fuck you, Baltimore. Excellent, little funny. So, Hody, Kareem, do you have anything to say to the words that were said about words that were said by other people?
Okay. Let's say this. I think Rothbard, the problem is, and I like him a lot, but I was talking to other anarchists about him, he mostly got a pretty easy life, because he got a grant and then he only taught 2 days, so he slept a lot. So in my opinion, what Rothbard did is, there's a point where thinking and theoretical knowledge becomes too much, because then you come up with a million different ideas, because I've done it myself. You can, write 50 books about the gym, but then eventually you got to pick up weights and do it. So I just hit my PR on rows, getting up to 70 pounds, on each hand. So we're getting there. And that's just from taking direct action consistently. And when I see people, anarchists on the left, who maybe don't have perfect theory, but they take direct action, and then they help somebody who's homeless, and they give them a sandwich, and then you say, go read, you can add whoever it is, Kropotkin, Bakunin, Bookchin, Emma Goldman, anybody, Rudolf Rocker.
Malcolm X.
And then they go, Malcolm X, Sonic Comics. And then they go check that out, and they're like, wow, okay. That stuff, in my opinion, works, like what I'm seeing Cooperation Tulsa doing. But the problem is is that yes, you can get too theoretical, and I think Rothbard got too theoretical, and then he's like a pinball machine. He's like, his early strategies I like. Okay, let's work with, I guess, leftists, but then he wrote a pretty. I don't like his article. Syndicalists have a death wish. I've actually debated that with Fee on a Twitter space by myself, which was, I'm like, I'm gonna get crushed here. I don't have an economics degree. I'm not particularly good at economics. Didn't even get through my college economics course. I was too busy. I had to skip that. And then on top of that, I couldn't pass, any economics thing, but I was able to debate with Fee. Well, look, if you have unions in a free society, that's probably how it would look. Plus, maybe you want to organize an army through syndicalist principles, not through anarcho-capitalist principles, because soldier syndicates would work better. And they were open to the ideas, so that's good. You can get more cooperation. I think very clearly. We have Kevin here, we have Hody here, Jeremiah, even when my friend Lizard Jesus comes back, that you can get a lot more cooperation out of the left who has actually read early Rothbard, as opposed to paleos who will say, and I've tried to run with Republicans, and they say to your face, oh, I love libertarians, we're just right there, like even Vivek. Vivek to me annoys me more than Trump, because Trump is just like, vote for me and then give me a 3%, which is just arrogant. It's bad sales tactics. But then Vivek's like, we want a nationalist alliance. Woo! These institutions should all go. I'm like, okay, Vivek, here's the thing. But when rubber meets the road, most Republicans, I'm like, okay, liberty, freedom, you have the Constitution in your bio. Let's just get rid of the DMV. Nothing too crazy. I didn't say abolish them. They're like, whoa, DMV, whoa, and the drug war. So they get scared real fast. Even when you say taxation is theft, most Republicans are like, well, I know I said I'm for freedom, but how do you... So they want to keep existing institutions alive. They just don't like who's in charge of the institutions. I'm saying the institutions are bad. As J. Edward Griffin said, you can have a group of good people and put them into an institution that's bad, and you'll have bad people. You get Thomas Massey or Ron Paul or Rand Paul or Coolidge once in a while. That's nice. That is the exception, not the norm. So I would say, in the interest of what I've seen actually working, early Rothbard is best. I've even talked to people who are big fans of Rothbard, gone on their streams, people in the Mises Caucus, Jack Lloyd, and I said early Rothbard is best Rothbard, and they actually agree with that. I think most people agree with that. Most people like early Rothbard. So I think his early, whatever you want to call it, leftist strategy, left strategy, works pretty good. And I'm not, the paleo thing, I'm pretty sure is not going to work. I can work with a Republican to get some things on gun laws and stuff, but I know in the back of their head, eventually it's going to go, well, can't you just vote for Trump? Well, we just kind of need NATO. Well, I want limited government, but can't you support It's Not Real? Come on, man. There's something here in the Bible vaguely that is not quoted, somewhere. Trump picked Nikki Haley, but he got tricked. He'll pardon Ross Ulbricht. I'm like, yeah, because he's saying that, even if he did, theoretically, there's more people in Stalin's gulags, or more people in jail in Stalin's gulags. So what about them? Oh, you don't care about them. You just want to appeal to the people you're in front of. So that's what conservatives do in a nutshell. That's why I don't think the paleo strategy actually works, even though there are good conservatives and there's conservatives who watch my stuff. It's not like I hate all conservatives. I just know they're going to default when you get to that end, like, all right, get rid of the state, get rid of this, get rid of this. They're going to actually pull back and say, well, we need a little bit of institutional control. And as we've seen over 250 years, America is not that impressive of a monarchy. The Han Dynasty lasted 500 years. America has probably lasted about half. Even though there's more technological advancements, it's still a failing monarchy. And that's because, in my opinion, monarchy helps with a free market make a lot of wealth. That wealth, in turn, from the private sector gets co-opted by the government. not because people are evil, just people are lazy and it's hard to innovate in the market and compete. So you get lazy and you want to make the goalposts. So corporatism comes, and then it's a really sticky situation. That's where we're at now. So I think the paleo strategy actually leads, in my opinion, to people who will not get rid of institutions, and then institutions will become corporatists. That's what we have now. That's not to say that like other regimes aren't bad. Idi Amin was quoted, "Hey, I'll get rid of other stuff," but he didn't have the amazing wealth, so he fell relatively quickly. So scrap the paleo strategy. Let's go with the leftist strategy. And if you want, I'd love to do a stream on debunking that article if you're familiar with it. Syndicalists have a death wish. I don't think they do unless you're fighting Nestor Makhno.
Sure. Well, all right. So before we do that, because Hody's been a bit, let's give you some things to say. And also, you have an article of your own that you wanted to bring up. Well, not your own, but like the link thing. You've got that one and a follow-up. So we can hit those two, and then we'll hit plank 4 finally. Because I mean, we've kind of buried the lead, but like, you know, again, as it were, libertarians like have a very complex discussion about things and get kind of off in the bushes. So, you know,
we enjoy setting the table before our meals.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of table setting. Okay. I will agree with Rockwell and Rothbard and Hoppe, even post-Liberty Rothbard, in that I completely agree that we can't afford to just ignore what happens. We can't just say, okay, everybody's free, now all the bad things are gone. Even in like an environmental sense, like oxygen and carbon are great things. Oh, look, they organized in a way that poisons people. Like, you know, that's... Caring about how things are organized are important. Oxygen and carbon can organize in very fantastic, helpful ways for people. They can also organize poisonously. It's not that, and so it's important to focus on how people are organized and that type of thing. I completely agree with argumentation ethics by Hoppe. Ultimately, when everyone is fully informed economics, we're not having debates about information or hypotheticals or what would happen. You'll notice that almost all economists, outside of a few select exceptions, generally tend to make the same forecasts. You know, like, and it's not, now obviously when you get the federal ones, they're like, printing money's good, and then they're like, where did this inflation come from? I'm talking about like legit out of the government economists, and not just like libertarian economists, but like anybody who's read Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, quotes all over the place by Marx and Keynes. And he has no problem with that, because generally they agree of what will happen when you institute this, that, or the other policy. The matter is ethics. Keynes thought it was ethical to have a society that is in a perpetual state of war in order to bolster the economy. The capitalists said, no, I don't believe that's ethical. And so they clashed, and they had some issues. So ultimately, we are talking about ethics here. My problem with all these guys is I completely disagree with their ethics. I do have an ethical problem with them. I have the information that they have. My problem is I don't think that black people and white people living next to each other creates evil societies. I would challenge anybody to search for a fascist country or a tyranny that was looking at isolating. Multiculturalism is fantastic. The fact that we have access to all these different thoughts and experiences and perspectives and people and ideas. Yeah, you're right. Some of them will clash, but without a state, that's fantastic. You know, great. Let them do what they're good at. I'll do what I get at. I clash with plenty of straight, white, male Christians all the time, because some of them like barbecue and some of them don't. And if you don't like barbecue, get the flip out my house. I make barbecue in my house. But like, that's something that doesn't need to become like a problem. It's something that society will organize itself in these ways if we focus on what is healthy and what is right. The problem that I have with these guys, I mean, let's talk about the very first sentence. I'm just going to give you a couple articles here. We have the founding arguments, arguments for paleoconservatism. So this is not like some hypothetical. It starts with Murray Rothbard, Right-Wing Populism, a Strategy for the Paleo Movement. And then it also starts with the case for paleo libertarianism by Lew Rockwell. They are the founders of this thing we are talking about. One of them is still alive today. One of them was very much alive while we were alive, and we got to talk with them. This is not us putting words in their mouth. They answered a lot of questions. They wrote a lot of articles. My problem is, first sentence in Rothbard's article, well, they finally got David Duke. But he sure scared the bejesus out of them. It took a massive campaign of hysteria and of fear and hate, orchestrated by all wings of the ruling elite and official. Like, my point is, wait, who's utilizing fear and hate here, Murray? Like, his issue is that these guys' issue is we should unite behind David Duke and Pat Buchanan
and George H.W. Bush,
and get behind the old school conservatives, because the neoconservatives were giving way on their social rights, on social tyranny, right? Like that they were like, okay. So Rockwell proposed this thing, and this is, I assume, the article that you wanted me to quote, and it's called "What I Learned from Paleoism" by Lew Rockwell. And this is a post-mortem on it. He actually mentions Rothbard died, and that pretty much killed a lot of the momentum for it. Also, it became very obsessed with bigotry. And the thing is bigotry was supposed to be what we conceded. We gave away our social freedoms, embraced a few of the conservative freedoms in order for them to end the Fed and tax, all the planks that Jeremy's going over right now. And you look at what worked out and what didn't work out. And a lot of it that even did work out, that we united with them, ended up backfiring, getting blown up in our faces by, they weaponized those laws against libertarianism, like against social libertarians, and then and they did not do any of the things economically that we wanted them to do. So I don't have a lot more to say on this other than it was a flawed problem from its get-go. And the thing is while I agree with like 99% of Rothbard and Rockwell and all these guys, and man, if we do like histories of like Rocker and stuff like that, I got issues with them as well. But like, even if I agree with 99% of these guys, the flaw is baked in there. I am not at an ethical level cool with removing people from their rightfully purchased homes because they're gay. I am not cool with somebody being forbidden to take a medication because they were born intersex. I am just not going to do it. And it is a book I encourage people to read. It is not a liberty book. If you're sick of reading philosophy all day, The Myth of Race. I encourage everybody to read this book because it talks about how governments have utilized people's bigotry to be statist, even when their statism was unpopular. Because people don't stand up for those that they hate or that they even kind of despise. Or let's be honest, even if they don't overwhelmingly love them. If there's somebody about to shoot my neighbor, I have to really love my neighbor. Right? Greater man hath no love than this, than he would lay down his life for his friends. I have to really love my friend or my neighbor if I'm going to jump in front of that bullet. Right? So if all of a sudden they're executing blacks and you're just like, they weren't my favorite anyway. Well, that's how the state grows, dingbat.
Which they are.
Right? Right. This can be a very unpopular thing. You might be like, well, I'm not for it, but I'm definitely not going to get involved. I'm just going to sit this out and watch it happen. Love your neighbors. It is, Dave Smith said this, and I completely agree with him. If this liberty is not founded on love, it will devolve into hate, and it will be a very bad, tyrannical thing that the state will love us being involved in. Love is core to my beliefs as a libertarian. I cannot emphasize that enough. I absolutely refuse to be associated with a hateful philosophy of liberty.
Yeah, and so there's also, this other half of that, they are killing black people and other minorities and white people too. And when it comes down to it, here's a really good stark example. I want gun rights, even if you're mentally ill, except if that mental illness is trans people. Then I'm with Trump, and you should take the guns first and do due process later. I'm all for using guns in self-defense, and all gun control is tyranny, and then when this illegal immigrant used a gun for self-defense and set strong, good, excellent legal precedent for all you FUDs out there, who were angry about this, or all you racists out there who don't like these migrants, he set better case law precedent for you, because if you use that case law precedent, what that means is you can just say, I was using the gun in self-defense. And it has, like, I'm not saying this will work. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. But the idea that it's not an awesome thing that using a gun in self-defense, right, could be completely authorized even if you weren't legally allowed to carry it, that should get, like, every conservative cock hard. But for some reason they're limp because they don't have the fascist backing of this, and they don't like brown people with guns because they might be a bigger threat to the white people. So it's like, I'm a replacement, I'm not gonna... And, like, I've literally had people in my mentions saying, I don't want black people armed. Go fuck yourself then, you shitbag. You're bad for liberty, and you're throwing your own people under the bus in the pursuit of getting your stupid fucking gun laws. Eat shit.
That wasn't very white man of you.
You know, if it, yeah,
that wasn't very gray man of you earlier.
Yeah, right. Yeah, see, like, see, here's the thing. Look, ich bin Deutsch und Scottish. I've got, like, Scottish and German. That's basically the entire thing that makes this fucking fucked up bullshit, okay? My ancestors were committing massacres in the name of their people for a long time. I'm not, like, you know, fucking... when people call me, like, a Jew, I'm pretty sure I'm exactly 0% Jew, but I stand up for Jews enough that I get that all the time now. So it's like, fucking, I've got my white man credentials over here, motherfuckers, and I still disagree with you.
Dude, my best friend was called Jewish once, and he's literally a Latino Venezuelan. So, like, it just becomes, like, when I watch people doing what you're talking about, I'm just like, I can't take you seriously. Please stop talking.
Fucking shitbags. Also, Orthodox Morris says, this is a great conversation. Thank you. Feel free to like, share, sub, etc. We talk about... See, the thing about my channel that sets it apart, I think, is I'm a fucking cunt, but I'm a cunt who's got the confidence to invite people on who I might not 100% align with, because I don't think that's necessary. I want the discussion to happen. So I have lots and lots of these kinds of discussions about a lot of issues, and I'm an extremist anarchist. I want very bad things to happen to government officials that I'm not going to say. But generally, you know, and by that I mean they'll get a light cough, because obviously I can't say anything terrible.
You want the bad things to happen in Minecraft. That's where you want it to happen.
In Deus Ex. Deus Ex, by the way, anybody who hasn't played that considers them a gamer. It's really cheap right now. Get it. It's like $125 on GOG. Go for it. Fuck off. Get Deus Ex. So all of that. But also we've got Patriot Eek. Hello. I contacted Larkin again about that, and he did not respond this time. It's been a year since the last time I contacted him, and I'm thinking of, like, making a bigger issue of it. So, he says, yeah, even defending their own loved ones is not automatic. Most people are fucking cowards. Agreed! Agreed! It's fucking awesome how these people claim to be libertarians in one breath, and then they're like, disarm that guy, though. Fuck off. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. And also he says, white cops are more dangerous to me than the average black gangster. Yeah. And, like, you know, it's one of those things, like, you know, statistically you're way more likely to get shot by a cop than a gangster because they're in their own gang. And, like, most people aren't willing to acknowledge that fact. And then they're like, well, if I don't commit crimes, I don't got anything to worry about. Bitch. There are so many felonies on the books that Crime a Day on Twitter will literally die before he hits, like, 5% of them. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, I'm getting my edgy bullshit fucking hackles up. But, yeah, those comments are there. Let's actually, though, real quick. Yeah, and I don't go effing with the gang's business, just like I wouldn't try to compete with the cartel's business. Yeah, like... I mean, if you do, if there's something you take strong, like, personal cultural issues with, like, more power to you. But, like, the cops are interfering with you on a fucking daily basis if you're doing anything interesting at all. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the sub, Orthodox. Thank you to all of the people who are tuning in, because there are like 800,000 other things to watch. And now, to get into this, because we were going to talk about... we're already like almost 2 hours in. That's hilarious. So, Plank 4. And we'll probably just pick this, because we did a good general recap and some bolstering of anti-paleo strategy shit today anyway, so it works out to begin with. But, like, Plank 4 is something to discuss here. So I'm going to go pull back up my paleo strategy copy, and people are free to respond to what was just said in chat while I do.
Oh, fun. The chat people.
Hi, chat people.
Hi, chat people.
And
I guess...
Eek is a long-time supporter, was like my biggest supporter for the longest time. So props to you for keeping on, and I hope things might be going a little better for you. But so I have it up. Free to say words.
Oh, I just I figured while you were grabbing it, I was just gonna, out of curiosity, be like, what's your beefs with capitalism? Just like, if you could nutshell it, why is it inherently statist to you? I just want to know your perspective.
Oh, for me?
No, was it Kevin who said it?
Kevin. Yeah, me.
Yeah.
So my first answer to that is that if you trace the development of capitalism back on a far enough timeline, you realize that it grew out of, grandfather, meaning, like, going way back, it grew out of feudal wealth. But the first capitalist entities, such as the Dutch East Indian Company, I mean, they're not quite capitalist, but like close-ish. Yeah, exactly. They were the first sort of what were governed as a corporation, as opposed to something under a previous set of property norms. They are quite statist. So the Dutch East Indian Tea Company, or the Dutch East Indian Company, sometimes I call it the Tea Company in my head because they did tea. They were a significant force in the colonization of India. So they projected a significant amount of force on behalf of the English government to colonize India. Fast forward to America during the Gilded Ages, 1830s, the Pinkertons, a private organization, would work with state authorities to help corporations squash labor movements. As a matter of fact, it's one of my favorite stories to tell people. You know where the term redneck comes from? What I was taught when I was a kid was that it comes from when your neck gets red from working in the sun all day because you're a white dude. But no, it's actually the Colorado Mining Union went to literal war with the National Guard and the Pinkertons in, I don't remember the exact date, so I'm not always great at details of this stuff, especially when I just, like Jeremy, I just jumped into this 20 minutes ago. Like, I didn't prepare anything. But I can tell you that the miners allied with the sheriffs of the local towns to face off with the Pinkertons' capitalist interests in the Gilded Ages, 1830s to 1890s, and literally the National Guard to have an actual guerrilla war over who was going to control the mines. And they tied red bandanas around their necks in order to tell each other, don't shoot each other, we're on the same team. They fought so hard and knew their mines better than the federal government that the federal government was eventually forced to do an ad hoc bombing campaign where they would drop dynamite down into the shafts of the mines that they were defending, either on foot or even from planes. I've read before, but I could be wrong about that particular detail because it seems a little outlandish as I say it out loud right now. And then you study the history of regulatory capture, corporate welfare, how corporations are significantly involved in lobbying. And then you figure out that right libertarians try to conflate large-scale capitalism and short-scale commerce. And the eventually conclusion I come to is that the system of capitalism, not necessarily a strong system of commerce among the mom and pop shops, but capitalism itself is inherently a statist system on behalf of an ownership class against the rest of society.
Yeah, and
So it is completely within libertarian norms, even right libertarian norms to an extent, to stand up to capitalists. And the movement has devolved into owning the libs.
yeah, and like
Literally, that's it.
and like just to say something in addition to that, fucking Rothbard agrees. Agreed at one point. And like, so the first thing is like ANCAP is a modifier. Anarcho capitalist is a hyphenated modifier that exists for a reason to differentiate from the fucking other shit. So like the quote from Rothbard here that I will try to speed read because I don't want to fucking cunt up the shit. If we are to keep the term capitalism at all, then we must distinguish between free market capitalism on one hand and state capitalism on the other. The two are as different as night and day in their nature and consequences. Free market capitalism is a network of free and voluntary exchanges in which producers work, produce, and exchange their products for the products of others, whose prices voluntarily arrived at. State capitalism consists of one or more groups making use of the coercive apparatus of the government, the state, to accumulate capital for themselves by expropriating the production of others by force and violence. Throughout history, states have existed as instruments for organized predation and exploitation. It doesn't matter much which group of people happen to gain control of the state at any given time, whether it be Oriental despots, kings, landlords, privileged merchants, army officers, or communist parties. The result is everywhere and always the coercive milking of the mass of the producers in most countries, of course, largely the peasantry, by a ruling class of dominant rulers and their higher professional bureaucracy. Generally, the state has, in its inception, naked banditry and conquest, after which the conquerors settle down among the subject population to exact permanent and continuing tribute in the form of taxation, and to parcel out the land of the peasants in huge tracts to the conquering warlords, who then proceed to extract rent. A modern paradigm is the Spanish conquest of Latin America, when the military conquest of the native Indian peasantry led to the parceling out of Indian lands to the Spanish families and the settling down of the Spaniards as a permanent ruling class over the native peasantry. So that one is available in left and right perspectives. I think it's also in Markets Not Capitalism, which is a great collection of essays collected by Chartier, and I don't remember who else right now, but I'll say the name probably before the end of this. Yes, yeah. So, like...
Dude, we added him to the chat, me and Kareem. So, like, I've been a Kevin Carson fanatic for, like, 7 years now.
Yeah, so...
Dry writing style, excellent technical takedown.
So, like, ultimately, Rothbard agrees. And so, like... If we acknowledge that the vast majority of capitalism throughout history has been the variety to where you would say, like, anarcho-capitalism needs to be its own phrase that exists on its own, you would say that even under a Rothbardian framework, the vast majority of capitalism has been shit-fucking us forever. So, yeah, that's my...
Yeah. I don't want to derail the whole conversation. I just thought it would be fun while you were looking it up to hear that. I would... probably like to give a retort, but should probably wait until like we're actually discussing that.
Let's do an entire panel someday on capitalism. Cool. So
I would like to add one small thing to that, and that is that essentially what I'm saying and what you guys are saying are the same thing, but I'm using different language.
Sure.
I find
that
that's
we've
often
never.
The case. We never. I'm saying and I think you guys got this, but like that we've never realized actual capitalism, and the thing that we're running around calling capitalism isn't. It's a corporatist system in which corporations act as extensions of the state, right? Like this is like the problem with like the corporations being allowed to do like mask or vaccine mandates is that I think anyone who doesn't look at them running around and doing that as an extension of the state because the state is coercing them and they're in alliance with them for their bailouts, that they're essentially doing the state's bidding on the state's behalf. And that also any corporation that has enough market pressure to control the price of to control the prices, essentially is exercising state level regulatory power, even if it's not legally enforced by, like, guns, essentially. And so, and then the thing is, sometimes the state does step in and fix this. For example, when Walmart was trying to pressure Tupperware and Rubbermaid into dropping their prices, so they bought Chinese stuff and then sold it at half price for over like 2 years, basically undercutting them so badly that they couldn't even pay their factory workers if they had sold at cost, to try to twist their arm. Eventually, the antitrust stepped in and fined them. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of problems we could find with what happened, but that's the exception, not the rule. And so there's definitely this merger of corporation and state going on that makes what we have now not what I would like to call capitalism. But I'm okay with just dispensing with the term capitalism if that's what it takes to solve the problem.
Well, and that's something. See, you talk about like words, not me, but like we both agree that fuck the state and corporate power. So, how about this? I'm just gonna float this. Call yourself a free market advocate and drop capitalism, just like Chartier and Carson would suggest. I think
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, okay,
One
good.
label I've used for my politics in the past is left market anarchist.
Yeah. I just say I'm an anarchist, and if anybody doesn't like it, they can suck a cunt. So we got so I'll read some things from chat, and we will get into the fourth, because the fourth is actually key to what we just fucking discussed. So we will get into the fourth, and the things in chat are Eduardo Morales recognizes Kevin, says hello.
He's my friend. He's a personal friend. I sent the link to him.
Cool.
Hey, Eduardo.
He also says the East Indian Company's failures led to the Sepoy Revolt, which led, I'm assuming you meant to say, Great Britain to directly annex India. Yep. Eek says, depends on the definition, corporatism or free exchange of person-to-person voluntary exchange. That's the definition of corporatism, governments and large corporations married. But he also agrees with the later like Rothbardian analysis of the thing that is. Eek also says voluntarist works. That's what I use. I don't mind voluntarist in a Wendy McElroy sense, but I do mind it in a lot of the other senses that it's used, and a lot of the other people who use it sense, when especially they become so involuntary as to accept things like the Paleo strategy. So it's a good word. It's just, I'd rather just cut to the chase and say, like, I oppose archons. Anybody who doesn't like it is a slow-mo. Orthodox Moore says free market commerce. Yeah. Also says, I think when a lot of people say free market capitalism within their mouths, they're thinking of voluntary commerce in their heads. I think a lot can be bridged by people who use either word. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Eek says, I didn't know it was having its definition changed too. It's less that, and it's just more that the people who use it are so often cunts that I don't want to fucking do that. Like, if I'm going to be associated with cunts, I'd rather be just like the radical anarchist cunts. At least they're interesting, you know? So, anyway, so to get on plank 4, plank 4 is directly relevant because it pisses me right the fuck off in a variety of ways. Plank 4 is where you start getting into some of the more directly abysmal interpretations of jive. And it's where he says, take back the streets, crush criminals. And by this, I mean, of course, not white-collar criminals or inside traders, but violent street criminals. Robbers, muggers, rapists, murderers. Cops must be unleashed and allowed to administer instant punishment, subject, of course, to liability when they are in error. Now, to be clear, that last part would be pretty based if it was, universally applied in something that actually existed, rather than something to basically CYA after making a statement like he made. But it's interesting to me, as I pick dandruff off my fucking German-Scottish nose, that, like, he fucking goes from state capitalism is bad and white-collar crime is the result of, the state's endorsement of and allotting of property as long as you suck their cock enough, to there are no white-collar criminals and they shouldn't be stopped. It's fucking hilarious, the just cucking and pandering. That's my comment. Keep on saying words. Y'all go. You can give words.
Words.
It's as bad as it sounds. White collar crime. Listen, if like we're talking all of a sudden, like we're talking bankers, we're talking like somebody. These are the people who steal $1 billion by misallocating stuff, that's supposed to go to the poor, and they put it in some, or global warming or something, and they put it in some slush fund, and it goes to pay their allies who pay for their
Clintons.
campaigns. Like this is, and so what we're talking about is no, leave the politicians alone, leave the people in power alone, really crack down on like the homeless gets thrown into here in Rothbard's version of this.
Oh,
like,
no, the homeless are next. We're coming
oh,
for
okay.
homeless.
I'll hold off on that one. But well, you know what? I will even forego my next one. Screw that. That's not a crime. Like I love. Here's the thing. No, I have no compassion in my heart for rapists or these other criminals. They are crimes. Like if people are mugging and stealing, all bad. I hate it, right? Like I hate when it's, oh, if I saw you steal something from Walmart, I ain't saying whatever. I probably won't say whatever, but the moral thing to do isn't to just turn a blind eye. It's to offer to pay for it, right? Like when somebody's stealing, they're not stealing from the company. They're stealing from everyone around them. The prices go up to compensate for these changes. Just like how you don't tax a business, you don't steal from them either. You steal from the quality of their goods, you steal from their employees' salaries, and you steal from the customers who go to that business. So like the thing is I don't have any compassion for that. I want to make that very clear. But when you say like let's unleash the cops to go after, like, let's be honest, if you're stealing from a Walmart, like diapers and stuff, you're in a desperate situation. I have a lot more compassion for you than I do for the Clintons. And so this is going after people who are economically hurting. And must I remind you that the effect of this paleo strategy was they kept the central banks that kept these people down, that kept them in difficult situations. And they did a bad thing, which again, Jean Valjean themselves, they stole a loaf of bread to feed their sister's son, right? How much do I want to come down on Jean Valjean? How much do you want to like suck up to Javert? That's it.
Odie, can I say something? I don't think you're wrong. I would be more interested in cutting executive and CEO bloated salaries to make up shoplifting costs, but that might be a little spiteful. I will say this. I believe there are a lot of people in America who, if the situation became desperate enough, would be willing to engage in Robin Hood style violence and steal from corporations explicitly to feed the poor. So I do believe that impulse, particularly among, say, young men, would exist in our society. So if things got desperate enough where nobody could afford that stuff anymore, you would absolutely see like groups of young men walking into Walmart with guns and saying, we're taking all the baby formula, and if you have a problem with it, we'll shoot you.
Actually,
so there's a point where that property rights no longer get respected, and the animal nature of man is just unleashed, and it becomes war of all against all. So the reason I'm a mutualist is because I believe that broad economic investment in everyone is the best way long term to sustain
peace,
liberty. Because, I don't really want a world of Robin Hood young men having to risk their lives against the Pinkertons to help their, girlfriends and moms feed their kids. That's all.
Interestingly enough, it's funny you mention that, because one of the like main criticisms I had, or people had, they're like, well, Kareem, we don't like the Zapatistas. I'm like, why? They're like, they robbed Walmart one time. I'm like, I bet Walmart gets subsidies from the Mexican government. And just saw they got a new president, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah,
isn't that new president like considered like? I saw some similar sentiment about, like, I think it's her. Like, if I remember correctly, Mexico now has a female president, and she supports like LGBT, and they're like, oh, this is exactly like Chase, and the wokes are winning.
No.
People like that.
They're
like, that's the opposite of Malay. I'm like, is that a bad thing?
Yeah. Well, especially since Malay is, like, all these fucking people, I could go on for hours, man. Because, like, all these fucking people, oh, we don't like is not real. Ukraine funding bad. NATO downvote. And then when somebody wants to join NATO and suck off Ukraine and Israel, maybe don't keep talking in favor of them. Maybe when he's saying, like, I support everything they're doing and what they're doing is right, you shut the fuck up. Huh?
I'm gonna go far left
Eh.
because that's a Murray book win.
So I have one thing that I wanted to comment on. Now, of course,
Go.
you'd have to go corporation by corporation in this case, right? But on the subject of like the bloated salaries thing, this is actually a thing that I really have had a lot of good traction with when talking particularly to Democrats and things, to kind of like shake them into like thinking about what the problems are, is that let's take a company like Ford, right? And now Ford does a lot of things.
Genesis Nazi little
they
bitch.
sell cars, of
Sorry.
course. Hold on, I'm going somewhere with this.
I
So
know,
they sell, They sell cars. They have, service, parts. They have warranty stuff they make money on, licensing deals, racing.
Mm-hmm.
So they have all these areas of their company. But
Yeah.
let's just look at their cars alone, right? And there's a lot of people like, well, these cars are expensive, and like the CEOs are ripping us off. I know this isn't exactly what you were saying, but like the CEO makes $24 million a year, and if he made money off of cars alone, they sell 17 million cars a year. So he makes less than $2 off of each car, but it's actually less than that because of all the other things that they also make money off of. But the government collects 16% of all GDP as tax revenue. So one way or another, 16% of that car went to the fucking government. Sometimes I think we might be worried about the wrong billionaires. Because the Ford, well, actually, it might be different. Ford might have a weapons division, but generally speaking, Ford's not bombing countries and building nukes and all that kind of shit.
Ford has a weapons division. It's the Syrian freedom fighters. I'm sorry, I want to keep it YouTube friendly, but every time I notice there's an insurrection, I'm like, how do these guys get Ford trucks like in the middle of the desert? It's like, well,
that's the ultimate technical truck. Quick little anecdote.
It's like Halo with the.
Do you guys know where the term technical comes from for a pickup truck that has like an anti-personnel weapon welded into the back?
I do not.
The process, this practice sort of started. I'm sure it's earlier than this, but the Red Cross would bring Toyota Hiace and Ford F-150s to Africa to like deliver aid supplies and stuff to the villages there. And gangs would just randomly rob them for their trucks so that they could turn the trucks into, machine gun beds, modern day Tanchankas, to reference Nestor Baco, who I'm sure you appreciate, Kareem.
You know what? You know what's funny? Nestor Makhno effectively fought two armies, and the U.S. Army, with all their money, is struggling against the Houthis.
You're going to see why this relates. So basically, the Cross went to their lawyers and said, well, how do we write these trucks off for our taxes? And the lawyers said, well, write them off as technical expenses because technically a truck is a piece of technology. And that's where the nickname technical came from for those kind of improvised anti-personnel vehicle weapons, is that that was because of the Red Cross tax designation on the write-off of the truck for when they got robbed. Thought that was a cool little story. That's all.
What are you today, by the way? Are you like leaning more, you're like, I gotta go to my commune or I gotta make $50 million in 10 seconds?
Short-term cap, long-term calm.
Patriot Eek says, I have the book, The Amazing Henry Ford. He was very anti-Jew. Yes. Yeah, fuck the Ford Motor Company and its Nazi bullshit. And see, that's the thing. The Ford Motor Company, like they have been making vehicles for the military for a long fucking time, and so that's how those surplus ends up in the hands of countries that the U.S. totally had nothing to do with, because the U.S. just offloads their surplus whenever they want to do a new version of Operation Cyclone or their Western support of literal Nazis in World War II. Like, and Henry Ford was making vehicles for fucking Hitler and helping him procure materials for war and shit. Like, and so I don't like the Ford Motor Company. I think they're bad and part of the military-industrial complex, and they can go fuck themselves. And also, if you did, here's my politically incorrect joke of the day. If you did want to give a suicide bomber a truck, the exploder. Just saying. Fucking anyway. So the general vibe I want to convey here is like Plank 4 is abjectly evil because after saying that the underclass rules, after like his state capitalism speech where he says that the underclass is the general like mass mulcted entity that is victimized primarily by the state, he then flips on a bitch and says like fucking the state is literally the victim of this underclass rule, and like the people in charge and like with all the money and assets and resources and shit, they're being ruled by the underclass because they're on welfare. And this underclass also has these civil rights now, and that's terrible, and we should ally with David Duke instead. And it's like fascism. It's like fucking like all this stuff is ramping up. And then let's get into Plank 5, which I hope Kevin is here for, because Plank 5 solidifies this by saying, take back the streets, get rid of the bums. Again, unleash the cops to clear the streets of bums and vagrants. Where will they go? Who cares? Hopefully they will disappear. That is, move from the ranks of the petted and cosseted bum class to the ranks of the productive members of society.
You're talking to somebody who literally helped addicts pay their bills when they were addicted and unable to work. So
yeah,
you can imagine from a personal level how I feel about that statement.
Loathing!
I really want to attack this one too. So like, this was a thing in Pittsburgh where they cleared out a homeless camp, and it's just like the problem isn't the fact that the camp is there. The problem is the fact that you created the conditions that made them homeless in the first place.
Yes.
And
I want to say one thing. I won't interrupt anymore. The armed left stopped the takedown of a homeless camp in Houston.
Awesome.
The cops showed up with guns, and a John Brown gun club group showed up with guns and faced off with the cops. And the cops said, well, all right, we're going to leave then. And that's just fucking badass.
My 2 cents, just a quick respond, and then because Eli, you can speak after that, I promise. But Huey Newton Gun Club and John Brown Gun Club are both better than the NRA for gun rights has ever been. And also shout out to the Firearms Policy Coalition and their lawsuit printer Go Burr. Eli, start wordsing. Apologies, I just had to also say that. Guns are a thing for me.
I'm bad. My ADHD makes it really easy for me to lose my train of thought, and I sort of have. So, can you summarize that plank again really quick?
Basically, the bum class needs to be cleared out and treated on the same level as criminals by unleashing the cops in order to get rid of the petted and cosseted bum class. Part of that underclass rule that they were talking about. He was, anyway.
I remember. I said so. Rothbard. So this is from from who is this from?
Rothbard.
Again? Okay, it is from Rothbard. So the problem that I think I see here in what Rothbard's like, particularly when he wants to ally with someone like David Duke, is it seems like he has a critical misunderstanding of fascism. Because people like David Duke, what they want, right? The way fascism works is fascism is a really fancy way to kind of say like the tyranny of the majority, where the justification for the use of state violence is on your cultural adherence to the majority values, right? And so it doesn't have to be morally consistent. It merely has to reinforce whatever the existing status quo is, essentially. And so at first it might be dynamic, but very quickly it gets settled in because, of course, being a dissident makes you unpopular. So unless there's an enormous paradigm shift, fascism has a very difficult time unrooting itself from whatever the paradigm is of its creation. And so the only two fascisms that were self-avowed and existed in history, the Italians and the Nazis, who were actually kind of bad at fascism, but fascism is bad anyway, so I don't have high expectations of either, is that they want essentially all the socialism and welfare and benefits that, say, a communist would, but only for the preferred adherent to the status quo. And so they're diametrically opposed to anything else Rothbard would have stood for. And so I really think he just didn't know what the fuck he was talking about in terms of David Duke, even if he was right about a whole lot of other economic observations.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, okay, so, I'll just say, fucking, he went on record not only as supporting Pat Buchanan in that essay, but in a follow-up speech, which was much longer, that I talked about literally 5 years ago. It's been 5 years since I wrote this fucking article, but most people aren't willing to read it, so they're just like, it's on my website, which I will be getting that SSL certificate figured out, but like, either way, I've been consistent on this issue for a long fucking time. And one of the places that I think is wild to bring up was that he was campaigning on behalf of George H.W. fucking Bush in the same area. And so he was like, no one has been more critical of George Bush than I, but yes, damn it, I'm working my way back to the president. What? 4 more years? Yes. There is only one rational answer for the conservative, the libertarian, or indeed any sensible American.
Hey, doggy.
So, like, when he supports this concept, you're not muted, Kareem. We can hear everything. You're not muted either now.
That's good, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want him on the stream, you can, but you are not muted. So, when he supported George H.W. Bush here, saying, no one has been more critical of George Bush than I, but yes, damn it, I am working my way back to the president. What? 4 more years? Yes, there is only one rational answer for the conservative, the libertarian, or indeed any sensible American. To me, that just breathes the same shit that we're hearing from many libertarians now about I would take Trump over Chase. And when it comes down to it, like, I wrote this paragraph. I said, I've been less and less popular with many supposed anarchists for resurfacing stuff like this and giving it the scrutiny it's due, from actually reading the fuller works of many of the authors I used to revere from surface-level quotes or their mass appeal books, which I did read. I found that these were not gods of ethics, much less liberty. That's not to say they weren't hugely valuable to liberty in one way or another, but it's to say that they are mortal, and they both bleed and make mistakes. It's a constant retort I have when people tell me I'm only anarchist because I'm young and inexperienced, that I learned most of my ideas from the writings of old dead people. But there's the mortality. Dead people were once living, imperfect creatures, and anyone with a shred of intellectual consistency will admit that. So then I went into the fact that, like, I started to look into panarchy when I realized that they were all flawed. There is no perfect system, and we should all try to, like, work together on this shit. And so, like, when he's saying we should support Bush, he's swinging the opposite direction. He's saying, not that I didn't get what I wanted in my own camp, so I'm going to work with, like, other anarchists in other camps. He's saying, I didn't get what I wanted in my own camp. Let's go fucking campaign for George H.W. Bush. Fucking madness. Insanity. Fucking evil garbage. Fascist noise. That's my take. Y'all can say words if you want.
Insanity is not free.
Yeah, right? Y'all are free to say words.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing about Rothbard is, like I said, it's like a ping pong ball. It's like, I like Ayn Rand. No, I don't like Ayn Rand. I actually agree with the disagreement he had with Ayn Rand. But then he's like, okay, leftists. Okay, that's not working. Okay, conservatives. Okay, that's not working. It's just, at some point, I think you need to, and I ping pong balled for a while until I figured stuff out, but there is a point where you need to stop doing weird stuff. And for me, I think like with anarchy, yes, with decentralized solutions, feel free to you can play around in that space. But I feel once you get to you go super statist or like H.W. Bush, I'm not really digging that. Now, if somebody's like, okay, I want like libertarian municipalism or communal things, and we have a popular assembly and we vote, which is funny because like if you go to the Libertarian Convention, you're like, hey guys, democracy sucks. They're like, yeah, the god that failed, Hans Hermann Hoppe. Woo! They're like, all right, let's go elect Angela and Rechtenwald and Clinton. I'm like, oh, but that sounds to me like direct democracy. Oh, okay, or maybe horizontal, and actually, or liquid in the case that you get somebody more technically there is some liquid democracy because somebody knows the issue better, so you have them as your direct representative. So, and then on top of that, what are they doing? You're getting states to confederate with each other voluntarily. So like, my left libertarian doesn't exist. It's bad. It's scary. And then literally at the Libertarian Convention, where most people are professed classical liberals, minarchists, and cabs, you're using the same structure that you would say these leftists are using. And what's interesting is I think a lot of people conflate leftists with liberal. To me, that's completely wrong because liberal
it's just wrong,
yeah, liberal is, because they'll say like, oh, it's all left wing. It's, like, I guess, and the joke I make is like, liberal is the like, pumpkin spice latte side of the thing, where they still like the corporatist system. They just want a friendlier, more equitable looking version of it, like social democrats, progressives, and worse, neoliberals. Those people just want to keep the same system. They just don't like the harsh rhetoric of conservatives, and maybe they want to have some left-wing social policies, but leftist is a post-capitalist philosophy. I would even consider anarcho-capitalism or free market anarchism, what he should have called it, a post-capitalist philosophy, or if you like, post-corporatist philosophy, meaning we're getting away from industrial, we're getting away from LLCs, and we're implementing a society of free market or exchange economy solutions. And in the case of Kevin, it'd probably be both exchanging with each other and different ideas.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing people need to understand is when I say another misconception is people like, oh, there was a joke there that somebody's like, oh, I gave Kareem or if Kareem gets an income, he's not a leftist anymore. I'm like, I can have an income, be an Austrian, and be a leftist. Because I still, on one hand, believe you should have a free market. I believe you should take rocks out of your yard, call it a pet rock, and sell it for as much as you want. I don't see anything morally wrong with that. On the other hand, I also believe in decolonialization very strongly. I think people have been lied to about especially what real communism is by Kropotkin and Bakunin, and they've also been lied to about this whole trans scare and red scare. It's been blown out of proportion, and these people really don't care about what they say they care about. They care about, in my opinion, grifting and selling books. So that's my main thing, is to get people to understand there's a difference between liberal and leftist, and that it's a good idea actually to work with leftists. And I'll say one last thing, like Dave Smith said before, and I like Dave Smith overall. Dave Smith said, oh, Trump's going to speak. We're not a bunch of college leftists. We can handle it. Interesting, because Dave, I'm not even going to say it didn't go your way. You got all the LNC chair. You retained that for a year. You retained everything, and then on top of that, you just got the VP you didn't like, and then you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to call myself a libertarian anymore. I think I'll walk away from the party. I'm like, you took one bad defeat. Like, I don't care what faction you are, even if you have a perfect you're going to get a defeat once in a while. That's just life. You don't just walk away. It's like, oh, my popular assembly voted that vaping is okay. I don't like vaping, but whatever. That's like, oh, I'm going to leave it. Murray Bookchin was wrong. Communalism doesn't work. It's like, geez, are you going to walk away that quickly? Well, it's interesting. College leftists are literally fighting off fascists, the police, which is an extension of fascism, and other entities that, to me, are blowing this way out of proportion. Even if there was some violence on both sides, I don't see the violence anywhere near the what happened after the George Floyd riots. So the college leftists are getting beat and fighting back and still hanging out in tents. You left the Libertarian Party, or you're saying you want to leave, after one time the VP didn't go your way, and you're the one who said he was going to run and then chose not to run, and then we couldn't get anything. So that is my criticism of that. I still like Dave, but that's my analysis of everything.
Well, and like just to be clear, so we'll be doing another LNC delegate stream, and I'm sure Kareem will be back. I don't know when that's gonna be because we've had some coordination and other issues. But let's let me just say, that's the problem with the Hoppa crowd, because Democracy, the God That Failed has some good points in it, but it's primarily a book devoted to fetishization, like in my opinion, like that's what I'm going to call it. But either way, the sort of lifting up of cultural homogeneity, and the battering down of alternate lifestyles. And if you tell a group of people, if you try to appeal to a group of people who use that as their Bible, their go-to, their manifesto, Democracy, the God That Failed, and other affiliated Hoppian noise. If you talk to those people and get those people on the same committee, they're never going to be unity people, because that book literally said that alternate lifestyles have to be purged. It said that you have to get rid of communists and homosexuals among a bunch of other people. You have to physically remove them in order to maintain a libertarian social order. So it's that's the reason these people are like this. So when they find out that they cannot physically remove the homosexuals and people that are being falsely called communists like Chase from the Libertarian Party, through Libertarian Party means, they're like, well, damn, I'm not sure I want a piece of that action anymore. It's a fundamental fucking foundational problem in certain libertarian circles, how cucked off to the right they are. And to answer the question from chat, from Orthodox, I 100% agree with the host's disdain for Plank 5. Who are these planks supposed to be for? What sectors of society? It sounds like it's meant for the management class so that the elites are protected. Bingo! Because Rothbard found out that he couldn't get what he wanted from, the strictly, anarchist libertarian right. And so he was like, you know what? I'm just going to go the authoritarian right-wing, format and, try to get Pat Buchanan, George H.W. Bush, David Duke sorts, the Birchers and shit, on my side. And it worked, in terms of getting those people to latch onto the movement, but it didn't work to get us more liberty. And they latched on to the point where, literally, when I was tabling for YAL, and, YAL chapter president or whatever, Young Americans for Liberty, you know what one of the organizations that sponsored the event was? The John Birch Society! So it's these people are affiliated, and the Koch brothers, who got their fucking generational wealth from Fred Koch, a literal Nazi conspirator, and all this shit runs downstream, and it creates, like, politics is downstream from culture. If your culture is directly relating to these people, and those people are the people that you try to appeal to, it's like that's where your politics are going to end up. And so that's the reason all this is. Those are who they're for. They were trying to get those people on their side, you know? And so they were trying to say, well, you can join us. And like, as long as you give libertarians some of what we want, we'll help you. Sound familiar? Might be happening now, huh? So it's like, this is the rub. This is the reason this is relevant and like potent shit. And to answer Eduardo in chat before I throw it back to Eli, are you anti-homeless or anti-homelessness? Good question for like anybody who reads these planks, because like I'm not anti-homeless. Like, you know, I'm against the idea of like, you know, these people like having to exist to begin with. I think society fucked them over and left them out to dry. You know, fucking that's my shit. So, and there's more in chat, but we'll focus on this now because we're gonna wrap up soon. But I'll get feedback from Eli and all the rest on these particular things that have been brought up, and then we will start to get into closing statements after that, because we've been going for 2 hours and it's like midnight for some of these people.
So, I just completely lost my train of thought again.
I was talking about how they were cucking to the right, the authoritarian right.
Oh.
Georgia, yeah.
Okay, so, one of the things, again, that I say to normal people, because they'll say, like, well, you know, why does libertarians like Trump, or, like, instead of Biden or whatever, or I thought you liked Trump. I'm like, you know, from the perspective of someone who likes him more than Biden, it's like, you're talking about someone who's scoring a 17 out of 100 in a field of people scoring less than 10, right? Like, 17 out of 100 is still terrible. Like, and same with, like, the Republicans. It's like, they're moving in the direction of the Libertarian Party in the sense that the Andromeda Galaxy is moving towards the Milky Way. You know, if they keep on that path, they might get here in 100,000 years, but I won't be around for it. And then another thing, too, though, is that the real problem at the end of the day is, if the Paleo strategy accomplished anything, it was that the Republicans go out and they sell right-wing libertarian ideas for the economy and then never fucking do them.
Exactly.
And then when things go wrong, the Democrats get up and they blame the Libertarians for having bad policies. And it's like, motherfucker, we were never in the room. So...
My democracy.
Yeah, so what you're really saying is that in terms of libertarianism, we don't have time for these slow-mo Republicans, and we've got to go fast.
Yeah, there you go. Got to go fast, and I think that's a good, funny line for me to end my thing on, because I'm one of the people that it's midnight for.
Kevin, words.
I don't really have a closing statement except to say that my primary sole reason for defying the Paleo strategy, aside from all of the illogic behind it, how does everybody in here feel about Max Stirner? Do we like him? Do we not like him?
I have no idea.
I think he did a lot of good work in terms of demystifying some shit. I'm personally a bigger like Nietzsche guy, but like,
no,
yeah,
exactly the same. But you'll love this. It pleases my ego to defy the Paleo strategy.
Yes.
I'm a New Englander who's raised by an schoolmarm centrist who's like a 2-2 on the political compass, like barely auth-right, but basically hates Trump with a passion, pro-Biden, pussy hat liberal, you get the idea, and a autistic computer programmer. My life has always leaned culturally left. When I went over from orthodox Marxism to right-wing libertarianism, pretty much I was, yes, nice. I was pretty much doing that because I fell in love with Ron Paul, like as a politician, as a person, his rhetoric. Like I was like, you are the best human being alive and you are who I want my president to be. But I don't need a logical reason to defy the Paleos. I just don't like them because I'm raised to not like them. And I just I can start there, and then we can go through the planks together, because I am a technician, so I like technical stuff.
Yeah,
All right.
and we'll finish the planks like on some other. We'll probably also like hit these two with some of the people that couldn't be here today. Next time we do another paleo problems, which will be at some point in the future. It'll happen in an amount of time. So with that being said, let's go to Hody for closing statements and remarks on words.
So bigotry, everybody pretty much acknowledges is bad. Some people will say, oh, but that's not real bigotry, or it's been overused. I have no doubt that occasionally it gets overused. The problem is what is loaded inside of bigotry when it happens, and the immorality that it carries with it. Everybody knows and kind of laughs at Lou Rockwell's review of Mighty Ducks 2, right? This is a very famous, like, oh, look at they're going up against these strong white Russians as though they'd have a prayer, but look at this, that like they got a Mexican kid and a girl on the team and making it look like they can compete. Now, people just poke at this and make fun of it because it's like Boomer yells at Cloud, world is getting better, and he's angry that like we have electronic bridges instead of manual ones that you moved with your fists, like, or whatever. Everybody's just laughing at him. The problem for me is that it actually disguised a bigger problem, which was blatant lies. He said that if you look at the stunt doubles, you won't. I didn't see a single name of a woman, or a name of a Latino person, or black person. Whatever. Look, like, so the implication is, of course, the actors might be Hispanic or women, but when you need the real work done, you have a white guy do it because they're the ones who can actually play hockey. Some of the names on the stunt double list: Catherine Boyum, Brooke Ballinger-White, Catherine Petra Villalobos, Fernando Escobar. Okay, so Lou Rockwell not just is a bigot, but lied to you in order to protect his bigotry. These stunt doubles were also minorities and also capable of the jobs that they did. These are tied together. Immorality is never isolated. The reason you stop a child and you correct them when they lie when they're young is not just so that they don't lie when they're older, but so that they also don't cheat and don't steal. It all falls under the umbrella of a virtue called honesty. And there's many ways to violate that honesty. So the issue with Rockwell isn't just he's a bigot. It's also that he's a liar. And also that by doing those things, he protects people like David Duke and Pat Buchanan and all these other problems. Major issues. Now, like I said, the first paleo movement even got too racist for Rockwell, which really should make you think something about this paleo strategy, guys. Maybe it really is time to pull the plug. If even Lou Rockwell goes, wow, basically we don't even care about central banking anymore so long as we're being racist assholes. So this is the issue, is like when you see immorality, it's usually not isolated. The hot mic moment at the LNC caught a guy named Avi Rachlin, Rachlin, spitting out a bunch of bigoted things, right? And a lot of the, unfortunately, say what you will, we'll say paleo conservatives, right? We're like, that sounds actually really based, what he said. The other thing was he said Chase was a registered communist until very recently, and ironically while he's supporting Rechtenwald, right? Like somebody who actually was a Marxist in 2020 versus Chase who was like angry with the Democrats when they wouldn't stop their wars in 2012, right? Like this is somebody who is not serious and not based in reality, and they're lying. But all the paleo conservatives, I mean, I listed the thing and just piled on. This guy sounds based. How do I follow him? Along with what I said about his lies, do you think that was the extent of the evil? That he just lies sometimes and sometimes tries to tell some kind of raunchy humor? No, of course not. He is also somebody who supports, I don't want to say this online, so I will say sexually assaulting women if they are wearing the wrong kind of clothes. He's said this on Reddit before. He said without government, he would absolutely not only sexually assault the women, but kill them so that when government got turned back on, he couldn't get caught. And that every guy thinks like this. He also is on video using the N-word. This man was a representative delegate of the Libertarian Party, showed up at a convention, talked into an open microphone, and instead of getting clocked in the face or, my preference, lovingly corrected and put on a better path, somebody was just like, hey, kill the mics. Somebody's saying a bunch of racist stuff, so maybe just turn off the mic so that he can continue his racism and lies in peace. It's not just the racism and lies. You are also protecting his sexual assaults when you stick up for him. You are also protecting his use of the N-word in public, his harassment of people. He physically assaulted people on his college campus. This man needs help desperately. Lou Rockwell needs help desperately. So you may think, oh, I'm sticking up for this guy because, yeah, maybe he's got a couple of problems, but that's not the way sin works. Why is it that in Christianity, you can't just like have a little sin and have that hang around? It festers. It grows. The reason you have, like, Christ has to either redeem you completely or you are completely condemned is because not even a little sin can be in the presence of God, can't be in heaven. Why can't a little sin be in heaven? Because little sins breed big sins. Right? Like, these things grow. So we need to be a moral party. I think 5 times a libertarian speaker got up at the convention and said, I do what I want. Those words, right? I do what I want. What if what you want is what Avi Racklin wants? Is that still okay? Is that still moral and ethical? Or maybe is there a time when you step in and you go, what you want isn't right? Now, you don't have to kick this person out of your life, kick them to the curb. I think these people desperately need our help. I see them in the same situation as like a homeless person who is financially in trouble. This is a person who is ethically bankrupt. They have nothing left, right? This is a person who needs to have some values instilled in him. But you do have to interfere. And the more you look the other way and the more you say, well, it's not that bad, it's not okay, just remember, you might say the mold on your milk is okay today in the fridge. Will the mold on your milk be okay tomorrow? This was the problem with paleo conservatism. You accepted some mold. You were like, you know what? Let's have a little mold. Okay, a little bit of my ham is going to be molded. But guys, the rest of the ham's going to be fantastic. We just accept the little mold here. And next week, this ham's going to be so good. And here, what happened? The mold took over the whole ham. Libertarians, you didn't get abolition of the income tax. You didn't even get abolition of welfare. You didn't get abolition of anything. What did you get? You got your movement turned into a moldy cesspool for people like Avi Racklin to hang out in. You got nothing. They took your social freedom, said, thank you very much. You gave politicians control over more of your social lives, and you got no economic freedoms in return. Kill the mold. If you see cancer in your body, get chemo, take alternative medicine, take pills, get surgery. There might be different ways to combat it. I encourage you to try them all. But bottom line is, get the cancer out of your body. There's no such thing as an acceptable amount of cancer. I don't care if it's Nick Sarwark or Michael Heiss. Whoever it is that you say, that's a cancerous thing, cut it out or accept that that cancer is going to take everything over. There is no good enough. Even the primitive Church of Christ was constantly focused on self-improvement, focused inward, saying, how do we get better? How do we get better? Not how does Rome get better? How does Rome leave us alone more? How do we get better? So that the Romans can't contend with the strength of our faith. Anyhow, Hody Johns, Love First Christians, we are actually going to be studying Exodus tomorrow. We do regular Bible studies. We talk all the time about deep, great questions, hot stuff pertaining to nowadays. If you're in the mood to talk theology, you really love talking about faith, please join the Love First Christians. We would love to have you.
I have actually 2 really fast things on that subject.
Go.
And that is that one, there's a small part of me that says, like, well, why don't you bring up, like, me? Like, why, like, it's, chastising me as a friend. Well, why don't you bring up, things like Ron Paul or Rand Paul or some of the other ones? But those people, the higher profile people in the Liberty Caucus aren't a consequence of the paleo strategy. They're defectors from the Libertarian Party for the most part. Yeah. So, like, they can't. I don't think it would be fair to give the paleos credit even if it seems like credit might be due there, that's not how those people got into those places.
Also, Rand Paul specifically said, "I'm not a libertarian," and then talked a bunch of fucking shit about libertarians. Like, I always make the point, what is it with people named Rand and hating libertarians but still being called them?
Well,
anyway.
he can say that, but he
Because
came from Ron, and he's still basically a defector, whether he likes this or not.
Massey and Amash are better than Rand, though, in my opinion.
So, but then the next thing is on the Avi thing, and I don't even know the name of the person who said this, and I don't even know if what they said is accurate, because I didn't hear and I didn't really look into whatever that was caught on the hot mic. But I heard someone characterize it as like, yeah, because some dumb fucking Mexican couldn't shut up about the Jews. And I'm like, wow, talk about missing the point completely. Like, holy shit.
Maybe fix your culture? Oh, well, damn, that'd be hard. That would alienate your base. Kevin.
Like,
sorry.
Damn it.
Interrupt. I just wanted to ask Cody a question real quick. Given his strong Christian libertarian leanings, do you have an opinion on the Jesuits? And if so, what is it?
My opinion on any religious sect is pretty much to treat them as individuals. I'll go ahead and say a really hardcore thing right now, and then this will be a massive controversy, but I feel that there are great Christians who have never heard the name of Christ in their entire lives. There is a segment that is in the Bible that's actually kind of famous that says, people went before God and they were like, "Whoa, we preached in your name and we did all these great things," and God's like, "I don't even know who you are," right?
No,
and then
the Jesuit order of Catholic priests, they are Christians. Yeah. Oh, you know that.
Right. No, I know. And then there's another segment of people that, and this one gets talked about less, but it's the same parable in the Bible, the sheep and the goats. And they go, and Christ is like, "Hey, come on in. You guys are welcome in." They're like, "When did we serve you? I don't remember doing that." And and God's like, "Oh, real simple. And as much as you did to the least of these, you did it unto me. So when you were serving them, you actually served me. You actually served me really well, even though you never used my name," right? This is in the scriptures. It's in the Gospels, for goodness sake. It is in the scriptures several times. So as far as like the Jesuits go, good and bad. As far as like accounting for their like overall culture, I think that would like probably warrant like a deeper conversation.
We'll do that at some point. But
I would love to have it. I'm uncomfortable with like my closing statements giving like a total breakdown of the Jesuits, I guess. But I see what you're asking, and I would love to get into it, but I think maybe I should steer clear just for this one.
We'll do some more theology centered streams at some point. Kareem.
All right, I'm switching ideologies quite a lot. I guess what I'll say about it is this: if somebody is going to use state power, it's not a good idea to really work with them other than issue coalitions, because, hey, after that issue's done, they're still going to go back to utilizing whatever state power they want, and they're still a statist, so keep that in mind. And that goes not just for conservatives, but Marxist-Leninists, that goes for tankies, that goes for, fascists, that goes for any variant of fascism you can think of. So I think, personally, if somebody believes in complete decentralization on a praxeological level, it's a good idea to work with them and find as much common ground as you can, even though we might have different ideas. For example, conservatives will disagree on NATO and war. However, I'll disagree with people on like private or public property or personal property, which to me, I'm like, this is kind of getting ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous we're fighting over that, or like, what's the best economic system? I can live with that. I mean, it annoys me. Sometimes I think it's ridiculous, but to me, I would rather have that conversation than have the conversation of which violent institution or parts of it we want to keep, and then just change it over with one guy, and then it'll magically, like, okay, let's say even conservatives get Fauci. Let's say they do. Everybody's cheering it on. Woo! You don't think somebody else can step in the NIH who's going to be more narcissistic and psychopathic? To get in that position, you have to be a narcissist and a psychopath, in my opinion. If you can sit there and say, well, I can give health advice to 330 million people. And that's one thing I even don't like about health influencers. There's people like, the carnivore diet's the best. If you eat a vegetable one time, you're doomed. And then there's people like, oh, if you don't go vegan, my friend Jeffrey Phillips, hi Jeff, he's like, if you don't go vegan, you're a murderer, and meat has no health benefits, and it's, if you drink milk, that's a conspiracy. They're telling you vitamin D. And then there's people who will say, like, this diet, paleo, keto, all this stuff is the best.
Liver King, and totally not on steroids.
I actually don't mind Liver King because he's not competing for anything.
Yeah, he's competing for plenty. He's a lying piece of shit who's influencing a bunch of people to do a bunch of useless garbage.
Good morning, Proudles. Some of it's not bad. The earthing, the ancestral tenets,
yeah, but
I can get all behind.
You could get that from anyone.
But he hung out with primitive tribes. He's an advocate for anarcho-primitivism, man. He's a cool dude.
I don't think he's anarcho anything.
He isn't, but he's hung out with ancient tribes. Anyway, we can have a Liver King debate, but I guess the point is I'd rather work with Prims than conservatives because at least they're anarchists. And they're chilling in the Appalachian, even though it might be more hard to find them. And there's not as many. I think that's a more praxeological idea than saying, hey, I want to work with this guy who believes the state should exist in, 4 out of 6 domains, but, we'll work on the 2 domains. Fine, do an issue coalition. Okay, cool. Work with them to get gun laws or sex work or drugs or whatever it is. But then realize it's not going to be a long-term thing where I think working with anarcho, communalists, communists, collectivists, whatever it is, mutualists, the funny thing is, I have conservative friends who, they'll like some stuff, but then they'll say, well, but I think we let's give Trump another chance. Or on the other side, I find it funny, Destiny, the omni-liberal. Trump did all these bad things. That is 100% true. Biden did something bad. I saw him on TV. I have to look into that. Biden did some corrupt things. Really? Let me look into. I don't know if Biden's done. I believe Destiny would just give you a very fast Ben Shapiro type thing. Like, I think Biden's done everything correctly. It just there's been no corruption. But if there might have been, but I have to look into that. And same thing with these other influencers, Sticks, Hex, and Hammer, other stuff like that. I would rather try anarchy and decentralization and make that work or get as close to that as possible than to try and convince statists not to be statists and then freak out when they're statists. It's literally like Siegfried and Roy trying to make the tiger dance on a unicycle, and then the tiger bit him, and there's a Chris Rock skit. He's like, the tiger went crazy. He bit someone. That tiger didn't go crazy. The tiger went tiger. And I feel the conservatives, even the social democrats, the progressives, the neoliberals, the neocons, all these people, when they have a okay take and you say work with them, don't be surprised when they come back and bite you. And it was funny, most recently, everyone's like, Mike Johnson, the new speaker, he's a Christian and he's MAGA and he loves America and he reads his Bible. And they had all these like right-wing people like, yeah, we got a new speaker, take that. The dude's worse than McCarthy. And they're like, well, Matt Gaetz kicked him out. Isn't he a hero? I'm like, not really. I don't see what he changed exactly. This guy, funny enough, Pelosi at least played the game of, conservatives, we gave money to Ukraine, but, we passed, like, you can eat beef jerky and punch a cow on your front lawn act or so. Just something here. Here's something for the right wing. You can scream Jesus. We put that somewhere in the bill. Or you can say Merry Christmas. Now he's just like, all right, aid package to Ukraine. This. And then people are like, wait, You know, I was surprised he got co-opted so fast. It didn't even take that long. And people think Trump's a savior. Lindsey Graham, the worst person on earth, in my opinion, one of them at least, has said, oh, well, Trump helped with this aid package. Then he goes to us in the Libertarian Party and says, I'll end all the wars. Just vote for me. All you get is 3%. Okay. But then he said, nominate me if you want to win. For one thing, I don't think you can double nominate for the president. Maybe you can, but even if you could, here's the thing. It's literally like telling me your 3% doesn't matter, but I want your 3%.
Mhm.
So get coherent. And he didn't offer anything except he said he'll pardon Ross Ulbricht, and he said, I'm one of you guys. Well, instead of telling you I'm one of you, I don't care about someone saying I'm one of you. That literally feels to me like the preppy kid who's like, I'm a computer programmer or I'm a jock. If you are one of us, why don't you engage in the actions consistently that we're doing? That's how I can tell. The dog doesn't tell you your dog doesn't have to tell you I'm a dog. If dogs can talk, or I guess you can make a bird talk, but it does it by acting that out. He didn't act that out, and he gave a lousy sales pitch because I've been actually working on my sales skills to do this so I can travel around. So the point being is, long story short, I don't think the Paleos are going to change. They'll still believe in state power. They'll still believe in some type of force, even though it's limited. I don't think you can contain a monopoly on force. That being said, there's still a question of power. People ask me, why don't you just do freedom of association, which maybe I disagree with the ANCAPs a little bit. I think Bookchin's libertarian municipalism is a good way. As he says, citizenship should be an art form, not a regulated to just a status. Meaning you actually go to town halls, or you go to things like this, or Discord or Telegram, however it would work. Maybe if someone's disabled, you use computers now, and people discuss what they need to do at a local level. That's actually putting the ball in your court, as opposed to just doing things with slogans. Power of the people actually means something. I think that's a good idea. I maybe disagree with him that the market's bad. I think we still need, quote unquote, free markets, or as close to free markets as we can get with local regulations. That's my solution. Hopefully that results in panarchy, where people choose different societies.
All right. Eli, if you have anything else you got to say, your hand is up, so I figure you might.
Oh, it wasn't. It didn't take my hand down. I got nothing.
All right. Well, then I'll just finish with resist tyranny in all its forms. You can't compromise with the state. It's always going to take everything in the end, because that's what it's mechanistically designed to do. Either we accept the fact that the state is a criminal organization fundamentally bent on its own gain and power, or we don't. And if we don't, we should shut the fuck up about it and stop being libertarians. Because the libertarian premise is that this is a corrupt criminal organization. If you're going to tell me that this is a corrupt criminal organization, and then say that if we don't work with this corrupt criminal organization, we lose relevancy, I don't want that relevancy, because that relevancy is relevant to the wrong people. So my entire point can be boiled down to stick with principles, truth, honesty, justice, freedom, over any of this bullshit you're trying to fucking cuck to the right for in the name of relevancy, power, any of that. Because the only thing that's ever going to get you is another George H.W. Bush, and everywhere those people go, there follows in their trail a bloody smoking wake of a highway of death. Every single time. So, if you want real freedom is in anarchy. Real freedom is in, real libertarian coalitions with the left and right. It's not with this bullshit. Either accept that, and we'll be going over why this strategy is additionally bad in the future. There's more. Wait, there's more. If you want real, true freedom, you cannot seek it from the people who have already made this place the fuck shit it is. If you want freedom, you cannot ask for your freedom by asking your warden for the key to your cell. He is incentivized to keep you jailed. And if you don't realize that, you are fucked and cucked and will die very, very philosophically, a very, very slow, painful, philosophical death. maybe sometimes even a physical one, because they'll decide to Night of the Long Knives you when they decide you're no longer useful to them. These people are snakes. They are traitors to your freedom. They are antithetical to your liberty. Cut them off, stand for truth and actual liberty, and smash the fucking state.